Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to all my friends and viewers. Uh, before I will start my topic about Bible reading, Book of Genesis, uh, let's sing our national anthem, the Lupang Hinirang. So, ilagay po natin ating kanan kamay sa kaliwang dibdib at ating awitin ng Lupang Hinirang. Bayang mag-iiw, perlas na silangan ng alab ng puso, sa didibu'y buhay, lupang hinirang, duyang ka ng magiting, sa manlulupi, di ka pasisiid, sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong bughaw, may dilagang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal. Ang kislap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nagniwing. Ang bituin at araw niya'y kailan pa may di magdidilim. Lupa ng araw ng walhati pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Aming ligaya ng pag may maapi ang mamatay na dahil sa'yo. Ngayon po ating inyo po ako sundan, repeat after me. Itaas po natin ating kanang kamay at ito po ay ang ating panatang makabayan ng Pilipinas. So repeat after me. So taas po natin ating kanang kamay. Panatang makabayan, iniibig ko ang Pilipinas. Ito ang tanang aking lahi. Ako'y kanyang kinukop at tinutulungan upang maging malakas, maligaya at pakipakinabang. Bilang ganti ay diringgin ko ang payo ng aking mga magulang. Susundin ko ang mga tuntunin ng aking paralan. Tutuparin ko ang tungkulin ng isang mamayang makabayan at masunurin sa batas. Paglilingkuran ko ang aking bayan na walang pagimbot at ng buong katapatan. Sisikapin ko maging isang tunay na Pilipino sa isip, sa salita at sa gawa. To all my friends and viewer, kaya ko po ginagawa ito marahil ang iba po nating mga kababayan ay nakakalimutan ng awitin ng lupang hinirang at the same time ang panatang makabayan na po. So ngayon po I would like to start to read the book of Genesis chapter 38. At bago po ang lahat, kung papansinin niyo po sa panatang makabayan, ang mga bata ang mga bata ngayon ay hindi na nakikinig sa payo ng magulang, kaya ko binabanggit ang panatang makabayan ay para ipaalala sa mga kabataan ang salitang diringgin ko ang payo ng aking magulang at susundin ko ang mga tuntunin ng aking paralan. Sa mga kabataan po ngayon, mostly nakapokus sa mga gadgets, so nawawala na sila ng oras para makapag-aral. So nais ko pong, kaya ko po ginagawa ito dahil para maibalik tanaw sa kanila na dapat na sila mag-aral ng mabuti. At sa ating mga kababayan naman, either na sa ibang bansa ka o nandito ka sa Pilipinas, no, sinasabi rito, tutuparin ko ang tungkulin ng isang mamayang makabayan at masunod rin sa batas. Sa ngayon po kasi marami pong hindi sumusunod sa batas at puro pride o kayabangan ng umiiral. So ibig ko pong nais ko po sana, kaya nais ko po ito Nais ko po na maintindihan nila na dapat po tayong sumunod sa batas at gawin ng tama ang lahat ng mga sa tingin mong makakabuti sa iyo, sa pamilya mo at sa bansa. Okay, now let's proceed to our topic, the Book of Genesis, chapter 38, Juda and Tamar. Okay, to all my friends and viewers, brother and sister, this is a Bible reading. All right. So Judah and Tamar, chapter 8, verse 1. About the time Judah left his brothers and went to stay with a man named Hira, who was from the town of Adullam. There Judah met a young Canaanite woman whose father was named Shua. He married her, and she bore him a son whom he named Er. She became pregnant again and bore another son and named him Onan. Verse 5. Again she had a son and named him Shelah. Judah was a Azib when the boy was born. Verse 6. For his first son Er, Judah got wife whose name was Tamar. Er's conduct was evil and it displeased the Lord. So the Lord killed him. Then Judah said to Er's brothers, Onan, go and sleep with your brother's widow. Fulfill your obligations to her as husband's brother, so that your brother may have descendants. But Onan knew that the children would not belong to him. So when he had intercourse with his brother's widow, he let the semen spills of the ground, so that there would be no children for his brother. What he did displeased the Lord, and the Lord killed him also. Then Judah said to his daughter-in-law Tamar, return to your father's house and remains a widow until my son Shelah grows up. He said this because he was afraid that Shelah would be killed as his brother had been. So Tamar went back home. Verse 12. After some times Judah's wife died. When he had finished the time of mourning, he and his friend Zerah of Adullam went to Timnah where his sheep were being sheared. Someone told Tamar that her father-in-law was going to Timnah to shear his sheep, so she changed from the widow's clothes she had been wearing, covered her face with a veil, and sat down at the entrance to Enaim, a town on the road to Timnah. As you well know, Judah's youngest son Shelah was now grown up, and yet she had not been given to him in marriage. Verse 15. When Judah saw her, he thought that she was a prostitute because she had her face covered. He went over to her the sides of the road and says, all right, how much do you charge? He did not know that she was daughter-in-law. She said, what will you give me? Verse 17, he answered, I will send you a young goat from my flock. She says, all right, if you will give something to keep as pledge until you send that goat, what shall I give you as a pledge? He asked. She answered, your seal is cord and the walking stick you are carrying. He gave them her. Then they had intercourse, and she became pregnant. Tamar and whom took off her veil and put her widow's clothes back on. Verse 20, Judah sent his friend Hira to take the goat and get back from the woman, and the article had pledged, but Hira could not find her. He asked someone, he asked some men and Enai, where is the prostitute who was served by the road? There has never been prostitute here, they answered. He returned to Judah and says, I couldn't find her. The man, the place says that there had never been a prostitute there. Judah says, let her keep the things we don't want people laugh at us. I did try to pay her, but you couldn't find her. About 3 months later, someone told Judah, your daughter-in-law, Tamar, has been acting like a whore, and now she is pregnant. Judah ordered take her out, burn her to death. As she was being taken out, she sent word to her father-in-law, I am pregnant by the man who owns of these things. Look at them, and she was they are diseased with his course this walking stick. Judah recognized them and said, she is the right. I have failed in my obligations to her. I have given her to my son Shelah in marriage, and Judah never had intercourse with her again. When the times come for her to give birth, it was discovered that she was going to have twins. While she was in labor, one of them put out an arm. The midwife thought in tie a red threads around it and said, "This is one who was born." But he pulled his arm back, and his brother was born first. The midwife said, "So this is how you break your way out." So he was named Perez. Then his brother was born with the red thread on his arm, and he was named Zerah. Now let's translate in Tagalog. Genesis Kabanata 38, talata 1 talata 1 hanggang sa 30. Si Juda at si Tamar. Hindi nagtagal at humiwalay si Juda sa kanyang mga kapatid at nagpunta sa Adulam at nakipanirahan kay Hira. Napangasawa niya roon ang anak ni Suwa, isang Kananeo. Nagkaanak sila ng 3 lalaki. Ang ipinangalan sa panganay at ang pangalawa ay Onan. At Sela naman ang pangatlo. Si Juda ay nasa Kizib nang ipinanganak si Sela. Verse 6, pinapag-asawa ni Juda ang kanyang panganay na si at napangasawa nito ay si Tamar. Napakasama ng ugali ni kaya't nagalit sa kanya si Yahweh at siya'y pinatay. Kaya't sinabi ni Juda kay Onan, "Tungkulin mong sipingan ang balo ng iyong kapatid upang magkaroon siya ng mga anak sa pamamagitan mo." Alam ni Onan na hindi tuturing ng kanya ang magiging anak niya sa kanyang ipag. Kaya't itinapon niya sa labas ang kanyang bini upang huwag magkaanak ang kanyang kapatid sa pamamagitan niya. Ito'y kasuklan-suklam kay Yahweh, kaya't pinatay rin siya. Sinabi ni Juda kay Tamar, "Umuwi ka na muna sa inyo at hintayin mong lumaki ang bunso kong si Sela." Sinabi niya ito dahil sa takot na baka mangyari kay Sela ang sinapit ng kanyang mga kapatid, kaya't umuwi muna si Tamar sa kanyang ama. Hindi nagtagal at namatay ang asawa ni Juda matapos ang pagluluksa. Nagpunta si Juda sa Timat para tignan ang pagugupit ng kanyang mga tupa. Kasama niya ang kaibigan niya si Hira na taga Adulam. May nagsabi kay Tamar na pupunta si Timnat ang kanyang biyenan. Pagkarinig nito, hinubad niya ang kanyang damit panluksa. Nagtalokbong siya at naupo sa pasok ni Enam, bayang nadadaan patungo sa Timnat. Ginawa niya ito pagkat alam niyang binata na si Sela, ngut hindi pa sila ipinakakasal ng kanyang biyanan. Nakita ni Juda si Tamar, inakala niya ito'y patotot sapagkat may takip ang muka. Lumapit siya sa sinabi, "Halika't paligayahin mo ako." Hindi niya alam na ito ang kanyang manugang. "Anong ibabayad mo sa akin?" tanong ng babae. Sumagot si Juda, "Padadalan kita ng isang batang kambing." "Payag ako," sabi ng babae, "kung bibigyan mo ako ng isang sangla hanggang hindi ko tinatanggap ang ipadadala mo." Kabanata 18. Talatang 18. "Anong sangla ang gusto mo?" tanong ni Judy. Sumagot siya, ang singsing na pantatak kasama ang kadena at ang tungkod mo." Ibinigay niya ang hiningi ng babae at sila'y nagsiping. Nagdalang tao si Tamar. Pagkatapos umuwi siya at inalis ang kanyang talukbong at isinuot muli ang kanyang damit panluksa. Pag-uwi ni Juda, sinugo niya ang kaibigan niyang taga-Adulam upang dalhin sa babae ang pinangako niyang kambing at kunin naman ang iniwang sangla. Nagtanong-tanong siya sa mga lalaking taga roon at ang sagot ng mga ito ay walang gayong babae roon. Talatang 22. Nagbalik kay Juda ang kanyang kaibigan at sinabi ang naging bunga ng kanyang lakad. Kaya't sinabi ni Juda, "Hayaan mo na sa kanya ang iniwan kong sangla. Baka tayo'y pagtawanan ng mga tao." Dinala mo na sa kanyang ang kambing, ngunit wala siya roon. Makaraan ng 3 buwan, may nagsabi kay Juda, ang manugang mong si Tamar ay naglaro ng apoy at ngayon nagdadalang tao. Ilalabas niyo siya sa ilalabas niyo siya at sunugin ang utos ni Juda. Habang siya'y kinakaladkat na palabas, ipinasabi niya sa kanyang biyenan, ang mangyari ng mga ito ang nakabuntis sa akin. Tignan mo kung kanino ang singsing kadena tungkod na ito. Nakilala ni Juda ang iniwan niyang sangla, kaya sinabi niya, wala siyang kasalanan. Ako'y ang nagkulang, dapat siya'y ipinakasal ko siya kay Sela at hindi niya ito muling sinipingan. Talata 27. Dumating ang panahon ng pagluluwal ni Tamar at nasumpungan kambal ang kanyang iluluwal. Samantalang siya'y nagdaramdam, lumabas ang kamay ng isa at ito'y tinalian ng hilot na pulang sinulid upang makilala ang unang inanak. Ngunit inurong ng sanggol ang kanyang kamay at naunang lumabas ang kanyang kakambal. Sinabi ng hilot, ano ang nakipagsiksikan ka palabas? Dahil ito, Fares ang ipinangalan sa bata, ang sanggol na may tali pula, sinulid ang huling iniluwal, at ito'y pinangalan Zara. Book Let's proceed to Book of Genesis chapter 39. Joseph and Potiphar wives. Book of Genesis 39 verse 1 up to 23. Joseph and Potiphar wives, chapter 39 verse 1. Now the Ishmaelites had taken Joseph to Egypt and sold him to Potiphar, one of king's officers, who was the captain of the palace guard. The Lord was with Joseph and made him successful. He lived in the house of his Egyptian masters, who saw that the Lord was with Joseph and had made him successful in everything he did. Potiphar was pleased with him and made him his personal servant, so he put him in charge of his house and everything he owned. From then on, because of Joseph, the Lord blessed the household of the Egyptian and everything that he had in his house and in his fields. Potiphar turned over everything he had to the care of Joseph and did not concern himself with anything except the flood he ate. Joseph was well built and good looking, and after in a while master wives began to desire Joseph and asked him to go to bed with her. He refused and said to her, look, my master does not have to concern himself with anything in the house, because I am here. He has put me in charge of everything he has. I have as much authority in this house as he has, and has not kept back anything from me except you. How then could I do such as immoral thing and sin against God? Although she asked Joseph day after day, he would not go bed with her. Verse 11, but one day when Joseph went into the house to do these works, none of the house servants was there. She caught him by his robe and says, come to bed with me, but he escaped and ran outside, leaving his robe in her hand. When she saw that he had left in his robe and he ran out of the house, she called to her house servants and says, look at this Hebrew that my husband brought to the house is insulting us. He came into my room and tried to rape me, but I screamed as loud as I could. When he heard me scream, he ran out, leaving his robe beside me. She kept she kept his robe with her until Joseph master came home. Then she told him the same story, that Hebrew slave that you brought there came into my room and insulted me. But when I screamed, he ran outside, leaving his robe beside me. Verse 19, Joseph's master was furious and had Joseph arrested and put in the prison where the king's prisoners were kept, and there he stayed. Verse 21, but the Lord who was with Joseph and blessed him, so that the jailer was pleased with him. He put Joseph in charge of all the others prisoner and made him responsible for everything that was done in the prison. Verse 23, the jailer did not have to look after anything for which Joseph was responsible, because the Lord was with Joseph and made him succeed in everything he did. Now let's translate in Tagalog. Genesis, Kabanata, si Jose at ang asawa ni Potifar, Kabanata 1 hanggang sa 23. Okay, si Jose at ang asawa ni Potiphar, Kabanata 39, talatang 1. Pagdating sa Egipto, si Jose ay pinabili ng mga Ismailita kay Potifar, ang kapitan ng mga tanod sa palasyo ng Faraon. Sa buong panahon ng paglilingkod niya sa bahay ni Potifar, sumasa kanya si Yahweh. Ano mang kanyang gawin ay nagtatagumpay. Napansin ito ni Potifar sa tuwa niya, ay ginawa niya itong katiwala sa bahay at sa lahat niyang ari-arian. Mula noon, pinagpala ni Yahweh ang buong sambahayan ni Potifar dahil kay Jose. Umunlad ang kanyang kabuhayan. Ipinagkatiwala ni Potifar kay Jose ang lahat maliban sa pagpili ng kanyang kakainin. Si Jose matipuno at makisig. Dumating ang panahon na humalingan siya ng asawa ni Potifar. Sinabi nito, sipingan mo ako. Tumanggi Jose at ang sabi, panatag po ang kalooban ng aking Panginoon sapagkat ako'y narito. Ginawa niya akong katiwala at ipinabahala niya sa akin ang lahat sa bahay na ito. Maliban sa inyong na kanyang asawa, hindi ko po magagawa ang ganyang kataksilan at pagkakasala sa Diyos. Hindi pinansin niya siya ang araw-araw na pagsusumamo sa kanya ng babae. Talata 11, ngunit isang araw na sa bahay si Jose upang gapanan ang kanyang tungkulin. Nagkataong wala roon ng ibang mga utusan. Walang ano-ano, hinawakan siya ng babae at sinabi, halika, sipingan mo na ako. Patakbong lumabas siya, ngunit nakuha ng babae ang kanyang balabal. Sa pangyayaring ito, nagsisigaw ito at tinawag ang mga katulong na lalaki. Tignan ninyo, dinahlan tayo ng asawa ko ng Hebreyong ito para tayo'y hamakin. Sukat ba namang pasukin ako sa aking silid at gusto akong pagsamantalan? Mabuti lamang at ako'y nakasigaw. Pagsigaw ko'y kumaripas siya ng takbo at naiwan sa akin ang kanyang damit. Talatang 16. Itinago niya ang balabal ni Jose hanggang sa dumating ang asawa. Sinabi niya rito, naku, ang Hebreyong dinala mo rito ay bigla na lamang pumasok sa aking silid. At ibig akong pagsamantalan nang ako'y sumigaw karipas takbo at naiwan sa akin ang kanyang balabal. Nagalit si Potifar nang marinig ang sinabi ng asawa. Kaya't ipinahuli niya si Jose at isinama sa mga bilanggong tauhan ng Faraon. Ngunit si Jose ay hindi pinabayaan niya. Ang bantay ng bilanggo ay naging napakabait sa kanya. Si Jose ay ginawa niyang tagapamahala ng lahat ng mga bilanggo at siya'y tanging nagpapasya kung ano ang gagawin sa loob ng bilangguan. Hindi na halos nakikialam ang bantay ng bilangguan sa ginawa ni Jose sapagkat alam niyang si Yahweh ang kasama nito sa lahat ng gawain. Now let's proceed to Book of Genesis chapter 40. Joseph interprets the prisoner's dream. Chapter 40, verse 1 of Book of Genesis. Sometimes later, the king Egypt wine steward and his chief baker offended the king. He was angry with his two officials and put them in prison in this house of captains of the guards, into the same place where Joseph was being kept. They spent a long time in prison, and the captain assigns Joseph as the servant. One night, the prisoners, the wine steward, and the chief baker each had a dream, and the dream has different meaning. When Joseph came to them in the morning, he saw they were upset. He asked them, "Why do you look so worried today?" They answered, "Each of us had a dream, and there is no one here to explain what the dreams mean. It is God who gives the ability to interpret dreams." Joseph says, "Tell me your dreams." Verse 9, so the wine steward said, "In my dreams there was a grapevine in front of me with the three branches on it. As soon as the leaves came out, the blossoms appeared and the grapes ripened. I was holding the king's cup, so I took the grapes and squeezed them into the cup and gave it to him." Verse 12, Joseph said, "This is what means the three branches are 3 days. In 3 days the king will release you, pardon you, and restore you to your positions. You will give him cup as your did before when you were his wine steward." Verse 14, "But please remember me when everything is going well for you, and please be kind enough to mention me to the king and help me get out of this prison. After all, I was kidnapped from the land of the Hebrew, and even here in Egypt, I didn't do anything to deserve being put in prison." Verse 16, when the chief baker saw the interpretation of the wine steward's dreams was favorable, he says to Joseph, "I had a dream too. I was carrying three bread baskets on my head. In the top baskets there were all kinds of baked goods for the king, and the birds were eating them." Verse 18, Joseph answered, "This is what it means. The three baskets are 3 days. In 3 days the king will release you and have your head cut off. Then he will hang your body on a pole, and the birds will eat your flesh." Verse 20, on his birthday 3 days later, the king gave a banquet for all his officials. He released his wine steward and his chief baker and brought them before his official. He restored the wine steward to his former position, but he executed the chief baker. It all happened just as Joseph had said. Verse 23, but the wine steward never gave Joseph another thought. He forgot all about him. Now, let's translate in Tagalog, Book of Genesis, Kabanata 40, talata 1 hanggang 23. Ipinaliwanag ni Jose ang mga panaginip. Minsan ang tagapangasiwa ng mga inumin ng Faraon at ng punong panadero'y kapwa nagkasala sa kanilang Panginoon. Sa galit nito'y sila'y pinakulong sa bahay ng punong gwardya ng pilitang pinagdalhan kay Jose. Si Jose ang naatasa ng kapitan na tumingin at maglingkod sa dalawang bilanggo kahit matagal silang magkasama sa bilangguan. Isang gabi, ang tagapangasiwa ng mga inumin at ang mga punong panadero ay kapwa nananaginip. Kinaumagahan nang dumalo si Jose na puna niyang nababalisa ang dalawa. Tinanong niya kung bakit at sila'y nagpaliwanag. "Alam mo, kapwa kami nga naginip." Excuse me. "Ngunit wala isa mang makapagpaliwanag ng kahulugan. Ang Diyos lamang ang magpapaunawa sa atin na kahulugan ng mga panaginip. Sabi niyo si ano ba na panaginipan niyo? Ang tagapangasiwa ng inumi ng unang nagsalaysay wika niya. Napanaginipan ko sa harapan ko may puno ng ubas na may tatlong sanga. Pagsipot ng dahon nito'y namulaklak na rin at kaagad na hinog ang mga bunga. Hawak ko noon ng saro ng Faraon, kaya't pinisa ko ang ubas at ibinigay sa Faraon. Talata 12. Ito ang kaulugan ng panaginip mo. Wika ni Jose ang tatlong sanga at tatlong araw. Sa loob ng tatlong araw, ipatatawag ka ng Paraon at patatawarin ka. Ibabalik ka sa dati mong tungkulin. Kaya kapag naroon ka na, banggitin mo naman ako sa Paraon. Ang totoo'y kinuha lamang ako ng lupain ng mga Hebreo at wala akong nalalamang dahilan upang mabilanggo. Talata 16. Pagkakita ng punong panadero na maganda ang kahulugan ng panaginip ng kanyang kasama, sinabi nito kay Jose, ako'y nanaginip din, ako'y may sunong daw ng tatlong bakol. Ang nasa ibabaw ay may lamang iba't ibang pagkain hinorno para sa Faraon. Ngunit ang pagkain iyo'y tinutuka ng mga ibon. Talata 18. Sinabi ni Jose, ito ang kahulugan ng panaginip mo. Sa loob ng 3 araw ay patatawag ka rin ng Paraon at pupugutan ka. Pagkatapos ibibitan sa kahoy ang iyong bangkay at hayaang tutukain ng mga ibon. Ang 3 araw ay karawan ng Paraon at naghanda siya ng isang salo-salo para sa kanyang mga kagawad. Iniharap niya ang kanyang mga panawin, ang tagapangasiwa ng mga inumin at mga punong panadero. Ibinalik niya sa tungkulin ang tagapangasiwa ng mga inumin. Ngunit ipinabitay ang punong panadero. Natupad ang sinabi ni Jose sa dalawa. Ngunit siya'y nakalimutan ng tagapangasiwa ng mga inumin. Now, let's proceed to Book of Genesis chapter 41. Chapter 41 verse 1 up to 36. Joseph interprets the king's dreams. Chapter 41 verse 1. After 2 years had passed, the kings of Egypt dreams that he was standing by the Nile River, when 7 cows fat and sleek came up out of the river and began to feed on the grass. Then 7 other cows came up. They were thin and bony. They came and stood by the other cows on the riverbank, and the thin cows ate up the fat cows. Then the king woke up. He fell asleep again and had another dream. 7 heads of grain, full and ripe, were growing on one stalk. Then 7 other Then 7 other heads of grain sprouted thin and scorched by the desert wind, and the thin heads of grain swallowed the full ones. The king woke up and realized that he had been dreaming. In the morning he was worried, so he sent for all the magicians and wise men of Egypt. He told them his dream, but no one could explain them to him. Verse 9. Then the wine steward says to the king, I must confess today that I have done wrong. You were angry with the chief baker and me, and you put us in prison in the house of the captains of the guard. One night each of us had a dream, and the dream had different meaning. A young Hebrew was there with us, a slave of the captains of the guard. We told him our dream, and he interpreted them for us. Things turned out just as he said. You restored me to my positions, but you executed the baker. Verse 14. The king sent for Joseph, and he was immediately brought from the prison. After he had shaved and changed his clothes, he came into the king's presence. The king says to him, I have had a dream and no one can explain it. I have been told that you can interpret dream. Verse 16, Joseph answered, I cannot, your majesty, but God will give a favorable interpretation. Verse 17, the king said, I dreamed that I was standing on the bank of the Nile when 7 cows fat and sleek came up out of the river and began feeding on the grass. Then 7 other cows came up which were thin and bony. They were the poorest cow I have ever seen anywhere in Egypt. Then 10 cows ate of the fat ones, but no one would have known it's because they looked just as bad as before. Then I woke up. I also dreamed that I saw 7 heads of grains, which were the full and ripe, growing on the one stalk. Then 7 heads of grain sprouted thin and scorched by the desert wind. And the 10 heads of grain swallowed the full ones. I told the dreams to the magician, but none of them could explain them to me. Verse 25 says, Joseph says to the king, the two dreams means the same thing. God has told you what he is going to do. The 7 fat cows are 7 years, and the 7 full heads of grains are also 7 years. They have the same meaning. The 17th cow which came up later, and the 17 heads of grains crushed by the desert, with are 7 years of famine. It's just as I told you, God has shown you what he is going to do. There will be 7 years of great plenty in all the land of Egypt. After that, there will be 7 years of famine, and all the good years will be forgotten because the famine will ruin the country. The time plenty will be entirely forgotten because the famine which follow will be so terrible. The repetition of your dream means that the matter fixed by God and that He will make it happen in the near future. Verse 33, now you should choose some man with wisdom and insight and put him in charge of the country. Verse 34, you must also appoint other official and take a few of the crops during the 7 years of plenty. Verse 35, order them to collect all the fruits during the God years that are coming and give them authority to store up grain in the city and guard it. 36. The food will be a reserve supply to the country during the 7 years of famine which are going to come on Egypt. In this way, the people will not starve. Joseph is made governor over Egypt. The king and his official approved this plan, and he said to them, we will never find a better man than Joseph, a man who has God's spirit in him. The king says to Joseph, God has shown you all this, so it's obvious that you have greater wisdom and insights than anyone else. I will put you in charge of my country, and all my people will obey your orders. Your authority will be second only to mine. I now appoint you governor over all Egypt. The king removed from his finger the ring engraved with the royal seal and put in Joseph's finger. He put a fine linen robe on him and placed a gold chain around his neck. He gave him the second royal chariots to ride in, and this guard of honor went ahead of him and cried out, make way, and so Joseph was appointed governor to him. I am the king, and no one in all Egypt shall so much as lift a hand or a foot without your permission. He gave Joseph the Egyptian name Zapenat Paneah, and he gave him a wife, Asenat, the daughter of Potiphar, a priest in the city of Heliopolis. Joseph was 30 years old when he began to serve the king of Egypt. He left the king's court and traveled all over the land. During the 7 years of plenty, the land produced abundant crops, all of which Joseph collected and stored in the city. In each store the food from the fields around it. There was so much grain that Joseph stopped measuring it. It was like the sands of the sea. Verse 50, before the years of famines came, Joseph had two sons. By Asenath, he says, God was made me forget all my suffering and all my father's family. So he named his first sons Manasseh. He also said, God has given me children in the land of my troubles. So he named his second sons Ephraim. Verse 53, the 7 years of plenty the land of Egypt had enjoyed came to an end, and the 7 years of famines began just as Joseph had said. There was famine in every other country, but there was a food throughout Egypt. When the Egyptians began the hungry, they cried out to the king for food. So he ordered them to go to Joseph and do what he told them. The famines grew worse and spread over the whole country, so Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold grains to the Egyptians. People came to Egypt from all over the world to buy grain from Joseph because the famine was severe everywhere. Now let's translate it in Tagalog. Ipinaliwanag ni Jose ang panaginip ng Paraon, Kabanata 41, talata 1 hanggang 57. Pagkaraan ng 2 taon, ang Parao naman ang nanaginip. Napanaginipan niyang siya'y nakatayo sa pangpang ng ilog Nilo. 8 ano-ano, may 7 magagandang matatabang baka na umahon sa ilog at nanginain ng damo. Umahon din mula sa ilog na iyon ang 7 pangit at payat na baka. Lumapit ang mga ito at kinain ng 7 matatabang baka at nagising ang Paraon. Nakatulog siya muli at nanaginip na naman may 7 uhay na sumipot sa isang puno ng trigo. Masagana at mataba ang mga butil nito. Walang ano-ano may sumipot na 7 uhay na madadalang at payat ang mga butil dahil sa hampas ng hangin. Kinain ng mga payat ang matatabang uhay at nagising ang Paraon. Noon niya nalaman siya pala'y nananaginip. Pagsapit ng umaga ay nabagabag siya. Kaya't ipinatawag niya lahat ng mga salamangkero at marurunong sa buong Egipto. Sinabi niya ang kanyang panaginip, ngunit isa may walang makapagpaliwanag. Talata Siyam. Lumapit si Faraon at ang tagapangasiwa ng mga inumi at sinabi sa kanya, ako po ay may malaking pagkukulang nagawa. Nang magalit po kayo sa amin ng punong panadero at pinabilanggo nyo kami sa tahanan ng kapitan ng mga tanod, kami po'y kapwa na naginip. Isa pong binatang Hebreo na alipin na kapitan ng mga tanod ang kasama namin doon. Siya po ang nagpaliwanag ng aming panaginip. Sinabi po niya, ako'y magbabalik sa tungkulin at ang punong panidero'y bibitayin. Nangyari po lahat ang kanyang sinabi. Talata 14, ipinatawag agad ni Faraon si Jose nang mailabas sa bilangguan. Siya'y nag-ahit, nagbibihis at madaling humarap sa hari. Sinabi ng Faraon sa kanya, ako'y nananaginip, ngunit walang makapagsabi sa akin ng kahulugan niyon. Nabalitaan kong mahusay kang magpaliwanag ng mga panaginip. Hindi po sa akin galing ang katugunan. Sabi ni Jose, ang Diyos po lamang ang nagbibigay ng katugunan. Amen. Sinabi ng Faraon, ako raw ay nakatayo sa pampang ng ilog Nilo. May 7 magaganda at matatabang baka umahon sa ilog at nanginginain. Walang ano-ano 7 mga payat na baka, pinakapangit na sa nakita ko sa buong Egipto ang umahon ding sa ilog. Kinain ng mga payat ang mga tatabang baka, ngunit parang walang anumang nangyari. Matapos kanin ng matatabang baka, iyon pa rin ang ayos ng mga payat na pagkapangit-pangit pa rin at ako'y nagising. Muli akong nakatulog at nanaginip na naman. May nakita kong 7 uhay na butil. Sa punuring iyon may sumipot na 7 uhay, ngunit napakapayat ng mga butil. Palibasa hinampas ng hangin. Kinain ng mga payat na uhay ang matataba. Isinalaysay ko na ito sa mga salamangkero, ngunit walang makapagpaliwanag sa akin. Iisa po ang kahulugan ng dalawang inyong panaginip. Wikano ipinaalam sa inyo ng Diyos kung ano ang kanyang gagawin. Ang 7 matabang baka po ay 7 taon. Ayon din po ang kahulugan ng 7 uhay na mataba ang butil. Ang sinasabi niyong 7 payat na baka at ang 7 uhay na payat na mga butil ay 7 taon ng taggutom. Gaya na sinabi ko sa inyo, iyan po ang gagawin ng Diyos. 7 taon na mananaganang sa buong Egipto. Ang susunod naman ay 7 taon ng tagutom, at dahil sa kapinsalaan idudulot nito, malilimutan na sa Egipto at nagdaan panahon ng kasaganaan. Mangyayari ito dahil sa katakot-takot na hirap na daranasin sa panahon ng tagutom. 2 ulit po ang inyong panaginip, mahal na Faraon, upang ipahiwatig sa inyo ang tinakda ng Diyos ang bagay na ito at malapit ng matupad. Talatang 33, ang mabuti po'y pumili kayo ng taong matatalino at may kakayahan upang siya'y mamahala sa Egipto. Maglagay kayo sa buong bansa ng mga tagalikom ng 5 bahagi ng lahat ng aanin sa loob ng 7 taon ng pananagana. Lahat ng pagkain na sa panahong iyon ay dapat tipunin. Ikimalig mga lungsod at pabantayang mabuti. Bigyan niyo ng kapangyarihan ng mga kagawad upang maisakatuparan ng lahat ng ito. Ang tinipong pagkain ay inihanda para sa 7 taon ng taggutom, nitiyak na darating sa Egipto sa gayon, hindi magugutom ang mayayaman sa buong bansa. Ginawang tagapamahala sa Egipto si Jose. Talata 37, nagustuhan ng Faraon at ng kanyang mga kagawad ang panukala ni Jose. Sinabi nila, bakit pa tayo hahanap ng iba samantalang siya na ang pinapatnubayan ng Espiritu ng Diyos? Kaya sinabi ng Faraon kay Jose, ang Diyos ang nagpakita sa iyo ng lahat ng ito, kaya't wala nang uuna pa sa iyo sa karunungan at pag-unawa. Ikaw ang mamamahala sa buong bansa at susundin ka ng lahat. Ito lamang ang aking trono, ang kaibahan mo sa akin, at ngayon ilalagay kita gobernador ng buong Egipto. Hinugot ni Faraon sa kanyang daliri ang singsing ng pantatak na isinuot kay Jose. Binisay niya ito ng damit na lino at sinabitan ng mga gintong kadena sa leeg. Ipinagamit sa kanya ang pangalawang sasakyan ng hari at binigyan din siya ng tanod pandangal upang sumigaw sa kanya sa unahan. Tabi kayo, sa gayon sa ilalim sa kanya ang kapamamahala sa buong Egipto. Sinabi ni Faraon kay Jose, ako ang Faraon at ikaw ang aking pangalawa, ngunit kung wala akong pahintulot, walang sino man sa Egipto na makakagawa ng anuman. Binigyan ni Jose ng bagong pangalan, Zafenat Panea, at ipinakasal sa kanya si Asena na anak ni Potiphar, ang saserdote sa Heliopolis. Bilang gobernador, inilibot ni Jose ang buong lupain ng Egipto. Talatang 46, 30 taon si Jose nang magsimulang maglingkod sa Faraon. Pagkaalis niya sa harapan ng hari, nilibot na niya ang buong Egipto, 7 taon na nag-aani ang nasagana sa buong lupain. Tinipon niya siyang lahat ng pagkain sa Egipto sa ikinamalig sa mga lungsod. Sa loob ng 7 taon ng kasaganan, tinipon niya ang bawat lungsod ang mga pagkain inaani sa palibot nito. Ang natitipon niyang trigo ay sindami ng buhangin sa dagat, anupat sa wakas hindi na niya tinatakal dahil sa dami. Bago dumating ang tagutob, nagkaanak si Jose ng 2 lalaki kay Asenat. Tinawag niyang Manases ang panganay sapagkat wika niya, niloob ng Diyos na malimot ko ang aking naging hirap sa bahay ng aking ama. Ephraim naman ang ipinangalan sa pangalawa sapagkat ang wika niya ay pinagkaluban ako ng Diyos na mga anak sa lupain ng aking paghihirap. Talatang 53, natapos ang 7 taon na kasaganan sa Egipto at sumunod ang 7 taon ng tagutom. Tulad ng sinabi ni Jose, sa buong Egipto may pagkain samantalang nagkakagutom sa ibang bansa. Nang wala nang makain ng mamayan, sila'y dumating sa Faraon. Sinabi ng mga Tagipto, magpunta kayo kay Jose at sundin niyo ang kanyang sasabihin. Lumaganap ang tagagutom sa buong bansa, binuksan ni Jose ang lahat ng mga kamali at ipinagbilhan ng trigo ang mga taga-Egipto. Paluban ng paluban tagutom sa buong Egipto. Lumaganap din ito sa ibang mga bansa. Kaya't ang mga mamayan nila ay pumunta sa Egipto upang bumili ng pagkain kay Jose. Now, let's proceed to Book of Genesis. 42. Verse 1 up to 38. Joseph's brother to go to Egypt to buy grain. 42 verse 1. When Jacob learns that there was grains in Egypt, he says to his son, why don't you do something? I hear that there is grain in Egypt. Go there and buy some to keep us from starving to death. So Joseph's 10 half-brothers went to buy grain in Egypt, but Jacob did not send Joseph's full brothers Benjamin with them because he was afraid that something might happen to him. The sons of Jacob came with others to buy grains because there was famine in the land of Canaan. Joseph, as governor of the land of Egypt, was selling grains to people from all over the world. So Joseph's brother came and bowed down before him with their faces to the ground. When Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them, but he acted as if he did not know them. He asked them harshly, where do you come from? We have come from Canaan to buy food, they answered. Although Joseph recognized his brother, they did not recognize him. He remembered that dream. He had dreams about them and said, you are a spy. You have come to find out where our country is weak. No, sir. They answered, we have come as your slave to buy food. We are all brothers. We are not spies, sir. We are honest men. Verse 12. Joseph said to them, no, you have come to find out where our country is weak. Verse 13, they said, we were 12 brothers in all, sir. Sons of the same man in the land of Canaan. One brother is dead, and the youngest is now with our father. Verse 14, it is just as I said. Joseph answered, you are a spy. This is how you will be tested. I swear the name of the king that you will never leave unless your youngest brother comes here. One of you must go and get him. The rest of you will be kept under guard until the truth of what you say can be tested. Otherwise, as sure as the king's lives, you are a spy. With that, he put them in prison for the 3 days. On the third day, Joseph said to them, I am God-fearing man, and I will spare your lives on one condition. To prove that you are honest, one of you will stay in the prison where you have been kept. The rest of you may go and take back to your starving families the grains that you have bought. Then you must bring your youngest brother to me. This will prove that you have been telling the truth, and I will not put you to death. They agreed to this and said to one another, Yes, now we are suffering the consequences of what we did to our brother. We saw the great trouble he was in when and begged for help, but we would not listen. That is why we are in this trouble. Verse 22, Reuben said, I told you not to harm the boy, but you wouldn't listen, and now we are being paid back for his death. Joseph understood what they said, but they did not know it because they had been speaking to him through an interpreter. Joseph left them and began to cry. When he was able to speak again, he came back, picked out Simeon, and had him tie up in front of them. Joseph's brother returns to Canaan. Joseph gave order to fill his brother's pack with grain, to put each man's money back in his sacks, and to give them food for the trip. This was done. The brothers loaded their donkeys with grains they had brought, and then they left. And the place where they spent the night, one of them opened his sacks to feed his donkey and found this money at the top of the sacks. My money has been returned to me. He called to his brother, Here isn't my sack. Their hearts sank, and its fear they asked one another, What has God done to us? Verse 29. When they came to their fathers Jacob in Canaan, they told him all that had happened to them. The governors of Egypt spoke harshly to us and accused us of spying against his country. We are not spies, we are answered, we are honest men. We were 12 brothers in all, sons of the same fathers. One brother is dead, and the youngest is still in Canaan with our fathers. The man answered, This is how I will find out if you are honest men. One of you will stay with me, the rest will take grain to your starving families and live. Bring your youngest brother to me, then I will know that you are not a spy, but honest men. I will give your brother back to you, and you can stay here and trade. Verse 35. The Then when they empty out their sacks, every one of them found his bag money, and when they saw the money, they and their fathers Jacob were afraid. Their father said to them, Do you want to make me lose all my children? Joseph is gone, Simeon is gone, and now you want to take my away Benjamin. I am the one who suffered. Verse 37. Reuben said to his father, If I do not bring Benjamin back to you, you can kill my two sons. Put him in my care, and I will bring him back. Verse 38. But Jacob said, My son cannot go with you. His brother is dead, and he is the only one left. Something might happen to him on the way. I am old man, and the sorrow you would cause me would kill me. Now let's translate this into Tagalog.
Let's translate this into Tagalog.
Joseph's brothers nagpunta sa Egipto ang mga kapatid
Joseph's
ni Jose.
brothers nagpunta sa Egipto
Kabanata
ang mga kapatid ni Jose.
42, talata 1 hanggang
Kabanata 42, talata 1 hanggang
30 38.
38.
Nagpunta sa Egipto ang mga kapatid ni Jose. Nabalitian ni Jacob na maraming pagkain sa
Nagpunta sa
Egipto, kaya
Egipto ang
sinabi
mga
niya sa
kapatid ni
kanyang mga
Jose.
anak na lalaki,
Nabalitian ni Jacob na
"Ano ang
maraming
ginagawa
pagkain sa
niyo?
Egipto, kaya
Pumunta
sinabi
kayo
niya
sa
sa
Egipto at
kanyang mga
bumili
anak
agad
na
ng
lalaki,
pagkain upang hindi tayo
ano ang
mamatay ng
ginagawa
gutom."
niyo? Pumunta
Balita ko'y
kayo sa
maraming
Egipto at
pagkain doon.
bumili agad
Pumunta
ng
nga sa
pagkain
Egipto ang
upang
10
hindi
mga
tayo
kapatid ni
mamatay ng
Jose
gutom. Balita ko'y maraming pagkain doon. Pumunta nga sa Egipto ang 10 mga
upang
kapatid ni
bumili
Jose.
ng pagkain. Si Benjamin ang tunay na kapatid ni Jose ay hindi
Upang
na
bumili ng
pinasama ni
pagkain. Si
Jacob sa
Benjamin ang
takot
tunay
na
na kapatid
mamatay
ni
rin
Jose.
tulad ni Jose. Kasama ng
Ay
ibang
hindi na
taga-Kanaan,
pinasama ni
lumakad ang
Jacob
mga
sa
anak ni
takot na
Israel upang
mamatay rin
bumili ng
tulad ni
pagkain.
Jose.
Laganap na ang
Kasama ng
taggutom
ibang
sa buong
taga-Kanaan,
Kanaan. Si
lumakad
Jose
ang mga
bilang
anak ni
gobernador
Israel
ng
upang
Egipto
bumili ng pagkain.
ang
Laganap na ang
nagbibili
taggutom sa
ng
buong Kanaan. Si
pagkain sa
Jose
mga
bilang
tao.
gobernador ng Egipto ang
Kaya sa kanyang pumunta ang
nagbibili ng
kanyang mga
pagkain
kapatid.
sa mga tao.
Paglapit ng mga ito, sila
Kaya
yumukod sa
sa
kanyang
kanyang
harapan.
pumunta ang kanyang mga
Nakilala agad ni
kapatid.
Jose ang mga
Paglapit ng mga
kapatid
ito,
niya,
sila
ngunit hindi siya
yumukod sa
na
kanyang harapan. Nakilala agad ni
nagpahalata.
Jose ang
Taga
mga
saan
kapatid
kayo?
niya, ngunit hindi
Mabalasik
siya na
niyang tanong. Taga Kanaan po. Naparito
nagpahalata.
po kami upang
Taga
bumili
saan
ng
kayo?
pagkain, tugon nila.
Mabalasik niyang tanong.
Nakilala nga
Taga
ni
Kanaan
Jose
po.
ang kanyang
Naparito po
mga
kami
kapatid.
upang bumili ng pagkain, tugon nila.
Ngunit hindi
Nakilala nga
siya
ni Jose
namukha ng mga ito. Naalala niya ang kanyang mga
ngunit
panaginip tungkol sa
hindi siya
kanilang.
namukha ng mga ito.
Kaya
Naalala
sinabi
niya
niya,
ang
kayo'y
kanyang
mga
mga panaginip
espiya
tungkol
at
sa kanilang.
naparito kayo upang maniktik,
Kaya
hindi ba?
sinabi niya, kayo'y mga espiya at naparito kayo upang maniktik, hindi ba?
Excuse me. Talata 10. Aba, hindi po. Kami po ay bumili lamang ng pagkain.
Talata
Magkakapatid po
10.
kami at
Aba,
mga
hindi po.
taong
Kami
tapat.
po
Hindi
ay
po
bumili
kami
lamang
mga
ng
espiya.
pagkain.
Hindi
Magkakapatid po
ako
kami at mga
naniniwala, wika
taong
ni Sen,
tapat. Hindi
naparito
po
kayo
kami
upang
mga
titiktakan
espiya.
kami.
Hindi ako naniniwala, wika ni Jose, na parito kayo upang
Talata
titiktakan kami.
13. Kaya nagmakaawa sila, Ginoo, kami po'y 12 magkakapatid na sa Kanaan
Kaya
po ang aming ama.
nagmakaawa sila, Ginoo, kami
Pinaiwan po ang
po'y
bunso naming
12
kapatid,
magkakapatid na
ang isa po
sa
na may
Kanaan po
patay
ang
na.
aming ama. Pinaiwan
Sinabi
po
ni
ang
Jose,
bunso naming
tulad ng
kapatid,
sinabi ko,
ang
kayo'y
isa
mga
po na may
espiya at
patay na.
sinumpa ko sa ngalan ng
Sinabi ni
Faraon,
Jose,
hindi kayo
tulad ng
makakalis
sinabi ko,
hanggat
kayo'y
hindi nyo
mga espiya
dinadala
at
rito ang
sinumpa ko
inyong
sa
bunsong
ngalan ng
kapatid.
Faraon,
Hala,
hindi kayo
muwi
makakalis
ang isa
hanggat
sa
hindi nyo
inyo at
dinadala
kunin
rito
siya.
ang inyong bunsong kapatid. Hala,
Ang
umuwi
iba
ang isa
ikukulong
sa
dito
inyo
hanggat
at
hindi
kunin
nyo
siya.
napapatunayan ang inyong sinasabi. Kung
Ang
hindi
iba
nga espiya
ikukulong
nga
dito
kayo,
hanggat hindi nyo
3 araw niyang
napapatunayan
ikinulong
ang
ang
inyong
kanyang mga
sinasabi. Kung
kapatid.
hindi nga espiya nga kayo, 3 araw niyang ikinulong ang kanyang mga kapatid.
Talata 18. Pagsapit ng 3 araw, sinabi ni Jose sa kanila, ako'y may takot sa
Talata
Diyos.
18.
Bibigyan ko
Pagsapit
kayo
ng
ng mga
3 araw,
pagkakataon
sinabi ni Jose sa
mabuhay kung
kanila,
gagawin
ako'y
ninyo
may
ito.
takot sa
Ang
Diyos.
sabi niyo,
Bibigyan
tapat
ko
kayo,
kayo ng
hindi
mga
ba?
pagkakataon
Kung gayon,
mabuhay
isa
kung
lamang sa
gagawin
inyo
ninyo
ang
ito. Ang sabi
ibibilang ko.
niyo,
Ang
tapat
iba'y
kayo,
magdala
hindi
na ng
ba?
pagkain
Kung
binili
gayon,
nyo
isa
para
lamang sa inyo ang
sa inyong
ibibilang ko.
sambahayan.
Ang iba'y
Ngunit
magdala na ng
bumalik kayo
pagkain
agad na
binili nyo
dala ang
para
bunso nyong kapatid.
sa inyong
Dito ko
sambahayan.
malalaman na kayo'y
Ngunit
nagsasabi ng
bumalik kayo
totoo
agad
at
na
hindi
dala ang
kayo
bunso nyong kapatid.
sumang-ayon ng
Dito ko
lahat.
malalaman na kayo nagsasabi ng totoo at hindi kayo
Talata
sumang-ayon ng lahat.
21. Pagkatapos ang wika nila sa isa't isa,
Talata
nagbabayad
21.
ng tayo ngayon sa
Wika nila
ginawa natin
sa
sa
isa't
ating
isa,
kapatid. Nakikita natin ang
nagbabayad na
paghihirap
tayo
ng kanyang
ngayon sa
kalooban
ginawa
noon,
natin
ngunit
sa ating
hindi
kapatid.
natin pinansin ang kanyang
Nakikita natin ang
pamagmamakawa.
paghihirap ng kanyang
Kaya
kalooban
tayo
noon,
naman
ngunit
ngayon
hindi
ang nasa
natin
kagipitan.
pinansin ang kanyang pamagmamakawa. Kaya tayo naman ngayon
Iyan na
ang
nga ba
nasa
ang sinasabi
kagipitan.
ko, wika ni Robe. Nagsusumamo ako sa inyong huwag
Yan na nga
saktan
ba
ng
ang
bata,
sinasabi ko,
ngunit hindi kayo nakinig.
wika ni Rabi, nagsusumamo
Ngayon,
ako sa inyong huwag
pinagbabayad tayo
saktan
sa
ng
kanyang
bata, ngunit
kamatayan.
hindi kayo nakinig.
Hindi
Ngayon,
nilalam na naunawaan
pinagbabayad
niyo siya ang
tayo sa
kanilang
kanyang
usapan.
kamatayan.
sapagkat gumagamit pa ito ng interpret kung umaharap sa kanila. Iniwan muna sila ni Jose dahil hindi niya mapigil ang pagiyak ng mapanatag ng kanyang kaloob. Excuse me. Bumalik siya at ibinukod si Simeon. Ipinagapos niya ito sa harapan nila. Nagbalik ang mga kapatid ni Jose sa Kanaan. Iniutos ni Jose na sidla ng trigo ang kanilang mga sako at ilagay doon ang salaping ibinayad nila. Pinagbigyan pa sila ng makakain habang daan, nasunod na lahat ang utos ni Jose. Ikinarga ng magkakapatid sa mga aso ang kanilang biniling pagkain at sila umalis. Pagsapit ng gabi, tumigil sila upang mamahinga. Binuksan ng isa kanyang sako upang pakainin ng asno niya at nakitang salapi sa loob ng sako. Napasigaw ito. Ibinalik sa akin ang aking salapi. Ito ang aking sako sa kanilang pagtataka. Na itanong ng isa't isa, ano ang ginawang ito sa atin ng Diyos? Pagsapit nila sa Kanaan, isinalaysay nila kay Jacob ang nangyari sa kanila. Sinabi nila, Ama, napakabagsik po magsalita ng gobernador sa Egipto. Akalain ba naman niyong pagbintangan pa kami mga espiya? Sinabi po namin mga na tapat na tao kami at hindi mga espiya. Pinagtapat namin na kami 12 magkakapatid na lalaki at isa lang ang aming ama. Sinabi po namin na patay na ang isang naming kapatid at ang bunso na may kasama ninyo rito sa Kanaan. Pagkatapos po namin sabihin ito, akalain ninyong susubukan daw niya kung kami nagsasabi ng to. Pinaiwan po si Simeon at pinauwi na kaming dala ang pagkain aming binili. Ngunit maigpit po ang bili niya na bumalik kaming kasama ang aming bunso kapatid. Katunayan kami nagsasabi ng totoo. Kung magagawa namin ito, nangako po siyang palalayain si Simeon at pahintulutan kaming magnegosyo sa kanyang bansa. Nang isali nila ang kanilang sako, nakita nilang salaping kanilang bibinayad. Kaya pati si Jacob ay natakot. Sinabi niya, iiwan ba ninyo akong mag-isa? Wala na si Jose, wala na rin si Simeon. Ngayon gusto pa ninyo isama si Benjamin? Napagkabigat namang pasanin ito para sa akin. Sinabi ni Ruel, Ama, kung hindi ko may babalik sa inyo si Benjamin, patay na ninyo ang dalawa kong anak. Ipaubaya ninyo sa akin si Benjamin at ibabalik ko siya. Ngunit sinabi ni Juda, hindi ko mapapasama sa inyo ang aking anak. Patay na ang kanyang kapatid at siya na lamang nasa akin. Sa tanda kong nang ito, kung siya'y masasawi sa daan, hindi ko na mababata, mamamatay na rin ako. Now, let's proceed to Book of Genesis chapter 43. To all my friends and viewers, brother and sister. Chapter 43 verse 43 chapter 43 verse 1 up to verse 34. Joseph's brothers returns to Egypt with Benjamin. The families Canaan God's worst, and when the families of Jacob had eaten all the grains which had been brought from Egypt, Jacob says to his son, Go back and buy a little food for us. Judah said to him, The man sternly warned us that we would not be admitted to his presence unless we had our brother with us. If you are willing to send our brother with us, we will go and buy food for you. If you are not willing, we will not go, because the man told us we would not be admitted to his presence unless our brother with us. Jacob said, Why did you cause me so much trouble by telling the man that you have another brother? Verse 7, the answer, The man kept asking about us and our family. Is your father still living? Do you have another brother? We had to answer his question. How could we know that he would tell us to bring our brother with us? Verse 8, Judah says to his father, Send the boy with me, and he will leave at once. the one none of us will starve to death. I will pledge my own life, and you can hold me responsible for him. If I do not bring him back to you safe and sound, I will always bear the blame. If we had not waited so long, we could have been there and back twice by now. Their father says to them, if that is how it has to be, take the best products of the lands in your packs. As a present for us, the governor, a little resins, a little honey, spices, pistachio nuts, and almonds. Take with you also twice as much money because you must take back the money that was returned in the top of your sacks. Maybe it was a mistake. Take your brother and return at once. May Almighty God cause the man to have pity on you so that he will give Benjamin and your other brothers back to you. As for me, if I must lose my children, I must lose them.
As for me, if I must lose my children, I must lose them.
As they were being through. Uh, so the brothers took the gift and twice as much money and set out for Egypt with Benjamin. They presented themselves to Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to servants in charge of my home, they are going to eat with me at noon, so kill an animal and prepare it. The servant did as he had commanded and took them brothers to Joseph's house. Verse 18, as they were being brought to the house, they were afraid and thought, we are being brought here because of the money that was returned in our sacks the first time. They will suddenly attack to take our donkeys and make us slave. So as for the door of the house, they said to the servant in charge, if you please, sir, we came here once before to buy. When we set up come up the way home, we opened our sacks, and each man found his money in the top of his sacks. Every bit of it we have brought it back to you. We have also brought some more money with us to buy more food. We do not know who put our money's back in our sacks. The servant says, don't worry, don't be afraid. Your gods, the gods of your father, must have put the money in your sacks. For you, I received your payments. Then he brought Simeons to them. The servant took the brother into the house. He gave them water so they could wash their feet, and he fled their donkey. They got their gifts and got their gifts ready to presents to Joseph when he arrived at noon because they had been told that they were to eat with them. When Joseph got home, they took the gift into the house to him and bowed down to the ground before him. He asked about their health and then said, you told me about your old father. How is he? He is still alive and well? Verse 28, they answer, your humble servant, our father, is still alive and well, and they knelt and bowed down before him. Verse 29, when Joseph saw his brother Benjamin, he said, so this is your youngest brother, the one you told me about. God bless you, my son. Then Joseph left suddenly because his heart was full of tender feelings for his fathers. I'm sorry. Then Joseph left suddenly because his heart was full of tender feelings for his brother. He was about to break down, so he went to his room and cried. After he had washed his face, he came out and coming controlling himself. He ordered the meal to be served. Joseph was served at one table and his brother at another. The Egyptians were eating there were served separately because they considered it beneath their dignity to eat with Hebrew. The brothers had been seated at the table facing Joseph in the orders of their age, from the oldest to the youngest. When they saw how they had been seated, they looked at one another in amazement. Food was served to them from Joseph's table, and Benjamin was served 5 times as much as the rest of them, so they ate and drank with Joseph until they were drunk. Now let's translate in Tagalog.
Let's translate in Tagalog.
Nagbalik kay Jose ang magkakapatid na kasama si Benjamin. Kabanata 43,
Kayo say ang
talata
magkakapatid na
1
kasama si Benjamin.
hanggang
Kabanata 43, talata 1 hanggang
34. Nagbalik kay Jose ang magkakapatid na kasama ni si Benjamin. Lalong lumubha ang tagutom sa Kanaan nang maubos na ng sambahayan ni Jacob ang pagkain binili ni sa Egipto. Sinabi niya sa kanyang mga anak, bumili uli kayo ng pagkain sa Egipto.
sa Egipto.
Sinabi ni Juda sa kanya, maigpit po ang bilin sa amin ng gobernador doon na huwag na kami magpapakita sa kanya kung hindi namin kasama ang kapatid naming bunso. Kung pasasamahin ninyo siya, bibili po kami ng pagkain doon. Kung hindi nyo pahintulutan, hindi po kami makakapunta roon. Sinabi ni Israel, bakit ba naman sinabi pa ninyong meron ba kayong ibang kapatid? Ako ang pinahirapan niyo sa nangyaring ito. Nagpaliwanag sila. Inusisa po ng mabuti ang ating sambahayan. Itinanong sa amin kung mayroon pa kaming ama at iba bang kapatid na sumagot po lamang kami sa kanyang tanong. Hindi po namin alam na pati si Benjamin ay pipiliting iharap namin sa kanya. Kaya sinabi ni Judas kay Israel, Ama, mamamatay tayo ng gutom, pasamahin na ninyo si Benjamin at na makaalis na kami. Iginagaranti ako ang aking buhay. Ako po ang bahala sa kanya. Kung hindi ko siya may balik ng walang kapansanan, ako ang bunutan ninyo ng sisi. Kung hindi nyo kami pinaghintay ng matagal, marahil ay 2 balik na ang nagawa namin ngayon. Sinabi ni Israel, kung iyon ang mabuti, pahig na ako. Ngunit magdala kayo ng handog sa gobyerno, kaunting balsamo, pulot pukyutan, astragalo, laudano, alponsigo at almendro at ihandog nyo sa gobernador. Doblehin nyo ang 2 salapi sapagkat kailangan nyong ibalik ang salaping iniligay niya sa inyong mga sako. Maaring isa pagkakamali lamang yon. Isama na ninyo ang inyong kapatid at lumakad na kayo. Lubinawa ng Diyos ang makapangyarihan sa lahat. Nakakabagan kayo ng taong iyon upang mabalik sa akin si Simeon at si Benjamin. Kung hindi man sila maibalik, handa na ang loob ko. Natatakot sila nang sila'y dalhin sa bahay ni Jose sa loob nila. Marahil dinala tayo rito dahil sa kasalaping binalik sa ating mga sako nang una tayo pumarito. Maaring bigla na lamang tayong dakping kunin ng ating mga asno at tayo gawing mga lipid. Kaya't nilapitan nila ang katiwala ni Jose at kinausap sa may pintuan ng bahay ito. Sinabi nila, galing na po kami rito minsan at bumili ng pagkain. Nang kami nagpapahinga sa daan, binuksan namin ang aming mga sako at nakita sa loob ang lahat ng salaping ibinayad namin sa pagkain. Ito po dala namin para ibalik sa inyo. May dala pa po kaming bukod sa pambili ng pagkain. Hindi po namin alam kung sino ang naglagay ng mga sako sa salaping iyon. Huwag kayong mag-alala, sabi ng alipin. Huwag kayong matakot, ang Diyos ang inyong ama ang naglagay ng salaping yun. Tinanggap ko na ang inyong kabayaran sa binili niyong una. Inilabas na ng katiwala sa Simeon at isinama sa kanila. Sila'y pinapasok ng katiwala sa bahay ni Jose. Pinagugas ng mga paa at pinakain ang kanilang mga asno. Pagkatapos, inilabas ng mga magkakapatid ang kanilang handog para ipagkaloob kay Jose. Pagdating nito, narinig nila doon na sila'y magsasalo-salo. Pagdating ni Jose, yumukod silang lahat sa kanyang harapan at ibinigay ang dala nilang handog. Kinamusta sila ni Jose at pagkatapos ay tinanong, kamusta naman ang inyong amang, malakas pa ba siya? Ginoo, buhay pa po siya at malakas, tugon nila. At sila'y lumapit sumugot na muli sa harapan nila. Pagkakita ni Jose kay Benjamin, siya'y nagtanong, ito ba ang sinasabi niyong bunsong kapatid? Pagpalain ka ng Diyos. Hindi mapaglabanan ni Jose ang kanyang damdamin at halos siya'y mapaiyak. Dahil sa pagkakita sa kanyang kapatid, kaya siya'y pumasok sa kanyang silid at doon umiyak. Nang mapayapa na siya at ang kanyang kalooban, nagilamo siya, lumabas at nagpahain ng pagkain. Si Jose ay pinaghain mag-isa sa isang mesa at ang kanyang mga kapatid ay sa ibang mesa. Magkasalo naman ang mga Egyptyo sapagkat ikinahiya nilang makasalo ang mga Hebreo. Kaharap ni Jose ang kanyang mga kapatid na sunod-sunod ang mga pagkaupo ayon sa gulang. Nagkatingin sila at takantaka sa gayong pagkakaayos ng kanilang upo. Idinulot mula sa mesa ni Jose ang pagkain at 5 ibayo ang pagkain idudulot kay Benjamin. Masaya silang kumain at nag-inuman.
Masaya silang kumain at nag-inuman. Masaya silang kumain.
Uh, Now let's proceed to Book of Genesis chapter 44 verse 1 up to
Genesis chapter 44 verse 1 up to
verse 33 34.
verse 33 and 34.
The missing cup. Joseph commanded the servants in charge of his house fills the men's house with as much food as they can carry and put each man's money in the top of his socks. Put my silver cup in the top of the youngest brother's socks together with the money for his grain. He did as he was told. Early in the morning, the brothers were sent on their ways with their donkeys. When they had gone only a short distance from the city, Joseph says to the servant in charge of his house, "Hurry after those men when you catch up with them. Ask them, why have you paid back evil for good? Why did you steal my master his silver cup? It is the one he drinks from, the one he uses for divinations. You committed a serious crime." When the servants caught up with them, he repeated these words. They answered him, "What do you mean, sir, by talking like this? We swear that we have done no such thing. You know that we have brought back to you from the land of Canaan the money we found in the top of our sacks. Why then should we steal silver and gold from your master's house? Sir, if any one of us is found to have it will be put to death, and the rest of us will become your slave." He said, "I agree, but only one who was taken the cup will become my slave, and the rest of you can go free." So they quickly lowered their sacks to the ground, and each man opened his sacks. Joseph's servants searched carefully, beginning with the oldest and ending with the youngest, and the cup was found in Benjamin's sacks. The brothers stored their clothes and sorrow loaded their donkeys and returned to the city. Verse 14. When Judah and his brother came to Joseph's house, he was still there. They bowed down before him, and Joseph says, "What have you done? Didn't you know what this man is my positions could find you out by practicing divination?" Verse 16. "What can we say to you, sir?" Judah answered, "How can we argue? How can we clear ourselves? God has uncovered our guilt. All of us are now your slave, and not just the one with whom the cup was found." Verse 17. Joseph said, "Oh no, I would never do that. The only one who had the cup will be my slave. The rest of you may go back safe and sound to your father." Judah pleads for Benjamin. Judah went up to Joseph and said, "Please, sir, allow me to speak with you freely. Don't be angry with me. You are like the king himself." Sir, you ask, "Do you have father or another brother?" We answer, "We have a father who is old and younger brother born to him in his old age. The boy brother is dead, and he is the only one of his
that my brother is dead, and he is the only one of his
mother's children. Still alive, his father loved him very much. Sir, you
mother's
told us
children.
bring
Still
us
alive,
to
his
bring
father
him here
loved
so
him very
that
much.
you could see
Sir,
him.
you told
And
us
we
bring
answered that the boy could not
us
leave
to
his
bring him here
father.
so that you could see him.
If he did,
And we
his
answered
father
that
would
the boy
die.
could
Then
not
you
leave
said you
his
will not be
father.
admitted to my presence
If
against
he did,
unless
his
your
father would
youngest
die. Then you
brothers
said you
comes
will not
with
be
you.
admitted to my presence against unless your youngest
When we
brothers
went back to
comes
our
with you.
father, we told him
When we went back to our father, we told him
what you had said. Then he told us to return and buy a little food.
what you had said. Then
We
he told
answered, we
us
cannot
to
go.
return
We
and
will
buy a
not admitted
little
to the
food.
man's presence unless our
We
youngest
answered, we
brother
cannot
is
go.
with
We
us.
will not
We can go
admitted to
only
the
if our
man's
youngest
presence
brother goes
unless our
also.
youngest brother
Our father
goes
says to
also.
us, you
We
know
can go only
that
if
my
our
wife's
youngest
Rachel's
brother goes
bore me
also.
only two
Our
sons.
father says to
One
us,
of
you
them
know
has already
that
left.
my wife
He must
Rachel's
have
bore
been
me
torn
only
to
two sons.
pieces by wild
One of them
animals
has already left.
because I have
He must
not
have been
seen
torn
him
to pieces
since he
by
left. If you
animals
take this one
because I have
from me
not
now on,
seen him
something happens to
since he
him,
left. If
the
you take
sorrow
this
you
one
would because me
from me
would
now
kill
on,
me
something
as
happens to
old as
him,
I am.
the sorrow you would because me
And
would
verse
kill
30 to
me
31,
as
and now,
old as
sir,
I am.
Judah continue, if I go back to my father
Verse
without the
30 to
boy,
31,
as
and
soon
now,
as
sir, Judah continue,
he
if I go
sees
back to my
the
father
boy
without the boy,
is not with
as
me, he
soon
will die. His life is wrapped up
as
with the
he
life
sees
of the boy,
the boy
and he is
is not
also
with me,
that
he
the
will die.
sorrow
His
me
life is wrapped up
we
with the
would
life
cause
of the
him
boy,
would kill him.
and he is
What is
also
more, I
that
pledged my
what
life to my father
we
for the boy.
would
I
cause
told
him
him
would
that
kill
if
him.
I do not bring
What is
the
more, I
boy back
pledge
him,
my life to
I
my
would bear
father
the
for the
blame
boy.
all
I
my
told
life.
him that if
And
I
now,
do not
sir, I will
bring
stay
the boy
here
back him,
as your
I
slave
would
in
bear
place of
the
the boy.
blame
Let
all
him
my life.
go back
And
with
now,
his
sir, I
brothers.
will
How
stay
can I
here
go back to
as
my
your slave
father
in place
if
of
the
the boy.
boy is
Let
not
him
with me?
go
I
back with
cannot
his
bear to
brothers.
see
How can I
this
go back to my
disaster come
father
upon
if
my
the boy
father.
is not with me? I cannot bear to see this disaster come upon my father.
Now, let's translate this in Tagalog. Ang Kopang
Let's
Nawawala.
translate this in Tagalog.
Kabanata, Book of
Kopang nawawala.
Genesis, Kabanata 14,
Book of
talata
Genesis,
1 hanggang
Kabanata 14, talata 1 hanggang
34. Ang kopang nawawala. Inutusan ni Jose ang kanyang katiwala, punuin mo ang
ang kopang
trigo
nawawala.
ng trigo ang kanilang mga
Inutusan niyo
sako at
siyang
bago
kanyang
mo
katiwala,
saray, ilagay mo ang
punuin mo ang
salaping
trigo
ibinayad nila.
ng
Sa
trigo ang
sako na
kanilang mga sako at
pinakabunso,
bago mo
ilagay mo pa ang
saray,
aking
ilagay mo ang
inumang pilak.
salaping ibinayad nila.
Tinupad naman ng
Sa sako
katiwalang
na
inutos sa
pinakabunso,
kanya.
ilagay mo pa
Kinabukasan
ang
maaga
aking
pa'y
inumang pilak.
umalis na ang
Tinupad naman ng
magkakapatid
katiwalang
sakay
inutos
sa
sa kanya.
kanilang mga asno.
Kinabukasan maaga
Hindi pa
pa'y
sila
umalis na
nakakalayo na
ang
sa lungsod.
magkakapatid
Inutusan ni
sakay
Jose
sa
ang kanyang
kanilang
mga
mga
katiwala.
asno. Hindi
Habulin
pa
mo ang
sila
mga taong
nakakalayo
yun at
na sa
sabihin mo sa
lungsod.
kanila, bakit
Inutusan ni Jose ang
naman
kanyang mga
ganon
katiwala.
ang iginanti
Habulin
nyo
mo ang mga
sa
taong yun at sabihin mo sa
kabutihang
kanila,
ipinakita
bakit
namin sa inyo.
naman ganon
Sukat
ang
na
iginanti nyo sa
pag-interesan pa ninyo ang
kabutihang ipinakita namin sa inyo.
inumang
Sukat
pilak.
na
Yun ang
pag-interesan pa
inuman ng
ninyo
aking
ang
Panginoon at siya
inumang
rin
pilak.
niyang
Yun
ginagamit sa
ang inuman
panghuhula.
ng aking Panginoon
Kakilakilabot
at sa
yang ginawa niyo.
niyang ginagamit sa panghuhula. Kakilakilabot yang ginawa niyo.
Talata 6, inabutan sila ng katiwala at gayon nga ang sinabi
Talata
sa kanila.
6,
Sumagot naman
inabutan
sila,
sila
ano
ng
pong ibig niyo
katiwalat gayon
sabihin?
ang
Bakit kayo nagsalita ng
gayon
ganyan?
nga ang sinabi sa kanila. Sumagot naman sila, ano pong
Ni sa
ibig niyo sabihin?
pag-iisip,
Bakit
hindi
kayo
namin
nagsalita ng
magagawa yan.
ganyan? Ni sa
Nakita naman nyo
pag-iisip
nakarating na kami sa
ni sa
Kanaan. Gayon man
pag-iisip,
ibinalik
hindi
pa rin
namin
namin sa
magagawa
inyo
yan.
ang salaping natuklasan
Nakita naman
namin
niyo
sa
nakarating na
loob
kami
ng
sa
aming
Kanaan.
sako.
Gayon man
Bakit kami
ibinalik pa rin
magnanakaw
namin
ng
sa inyo
pilak at
ang
ginto
salaping
sa
natuklasan namin
tahanan ng inyong
sa
mga
loob ng
Panginoon?
aming sako. Bakit
Ginoo,
kami
ang sino
magnanakaw ng
man
pilak
sa
at
aming
ginto sa
ang
tahanan ng
aming
inyong mga
kakita,
Panginoon?
sino man
Ginoo,
sa aming
ang sino man sa
kakitaan ng
aming
inumang sinasabi nyo ay dapat na
sino man
mamatay
sa aming
at alipin
kakitaan
ninyo
ng
kaming lahat.
inumang sinasabi niyo ay dapat na
Mabuti
mamatay at
tugon ng
alipin ninyo
katiwala.
kami
Basta kung
lahat.
kanino makitang kopa siya'y gagawing alipin.
Mabuti tugon
Mga
ng
kalaya ng
katiwala.
iba,
Basta kung kanino
ibinabaan
makitang
nila ang
kopas
kanilang
siya'y
mga
gagawing
sako at
alipin.
pinagbuksan
Mga kalaya
isa-isang
ng iba,
hinuluglog ng katiwala mula
ibinabaan nila ang
sa
kanilang mga
pinakamatanda
sako
hanggang
at
sa
pinagbusan
pinakabata. At
isa-isang
natagpuan
hinuluglog
ang
ng
kopa sa
katiwala
sako ni
mula
Benjamin.
sa
Linahak
pinakamatanda
nila
hanggang
ang
sa
kanilang damit
pinakabata.
sa tindi
At
ng
natagpuan ang
kalungkutan.
kopa sa
ikinarga muli sa asno ang kanilang sako at bumalik sa lungsod. Nasa bahay pa si Jose nang magbalik si Juda at ang kanyang mga kapatid. Pagdating doon, sila yumukod sa kanyang harapan. Sinabi ni Jose, ano itong ginawa ninyo? Hindi ba niyo alam na marunong akong manghula? Wala kayong maitatago sa akin. Wala na po ako kami masasabi, tugon ni Juda. Wala po kami may kakatulad sa mga pangyayari. Diyos na po ang nagbunyag ng aming pagkakasala. Kaya hindi na lang kami kikinakitaan ng kopa, kundi lahat kami alipin na ninyo ngayon. Sinabi ni siya, hindi ko gagawin yun. Ang kinakitaan lamang ng kopa ang gagawin kong alipin. Ang iba'y makakauwi na sa inyong ama. Nagmakaawa si Juda. Lumapit si Juda kay Jose at tumika. Nakiusap po ako, Ginoo, kung inyong marapatin, huwag sana inyong ikagagalit. Ang palagay ko sa inyo'y para na kayong Faraon. Ginoo, tinanong nyo kung meron pa kaming ama at kapatid. Ang tugon po namin ay may ama kaming matanda na ang bunsong kapatid na anak niya sa katandaan. Sinabi namin patay ng kapatid nito at siya na lamang nabubuhay na anak ng kanyang kaya ng kanyang ina, kaya mahal na mahal siya ng aming ama. Inutos niyong dalhin namin siya rito upang inyong makita. Ipinaliwanag po namin mahirap ilayo sa aming ama ang bata sapagkat maaaring ikamatay niya ito. Ang wika naman niyo, hindi na ninyo kami tatanggapin dito kung hindi namin siya may harap sa inyo. Ang lahat ng ito ay sinabi namin sa aming ama na umuwi kami. Muli kami inutusan ng aming ama na pumarito upang bumili ng pagkain. Ipinaalala namin sa kanya na hindi niyo kami tatanggapin kung hindi kasama ang bunso naming kapatid. Sinabi po niyo sa amin, alam naman ninyo na dalawa lang ang mga anak ng kanilang ina. Wala na ang isa, maaring niluray ng mabangis na hayop at kung ang natitira ay isasama pa niyo, maaring mamatay ako sa dalamhati. Ang buhay po ng aming ama ay karugton ng buhay ng bata. Kaya't kung babalik kami nang hindi ito kasama, piyong siya mamamatay. Matanda na po siya at maaaring ako ang baksakan ng sisi kung siya mamamatay. Ang isa pa ay iganiransya ko sa ang aking buhay para sa bata. Sinabi ko po na kung siya hindi ko maibabalik, ako'y bubunutan niya ng sisi. Kaya kung papayag kayo, ako na ang alipin ninyo sa halip ng aking bunsong kapatid. Paintulutan na ninyong isama siya ng iba kong mga kapatid. Hindi po ako makakauwi kung hindi kasama si Benjamin. Hindi ko po mapababata ang matinding dagok na darating sa aming ama kung iyon ang mangyayari. Now, let's proceed to Book of Genesis chapter 45, verse 1 up to 28. Joseph tells his brothers, who is he? Chapter 45 verse 1, Joseph was no longer able to control his feelings in front of his servant, so he ordered them all to leave the room. No one else was with him. When Joseph told his brother who he was, he cried with such loud sob that the Egyptian heard it, and the news was taken to the king's palace. Joseph said to his brother, I am Joseph, is my father still alive? But when his brother heard this, they were so terrified that they could not answer. Then Joseph said to them, please come closer. They did, and he said, I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. Now, do not be upset or blame yourself because you told me here. It was really God who sent me ahead of you to save people. Lives. This is only the second year of my famine in the land. There will be 5 more years in which there will be neither plowing nor reaping. God sent me ahead of you to rescue you in this amazing way and to make sure that you and your descendants survive. So was not really you who sent me here, but God. He has made me the king, highest official. I am in charge of his whole country. I am the ruler of all Egypt. Now, hurry back to my father and tell him that this is what his son Joseph said. God has made me ruler of all Egypt. Come to me without delay. You can live in the regions of Goshen, where you can be near me, you, your children, your grandchildren, your sheep, your goats, your cattle, and everything else that you have. If you are in Goshen, I can take care of you. There will still 5 years of famine, and I do not want you, your family, and your livestock to starve. Joseph's continued, now all of you and you too, Benjamin, can see that I am really Joseph. Tell my father how powerful I am here in Egypt and tell him about everything that you have seen. Hurry and bring him here. He threw his arms around his brothers Benjamin and began to cry. Benjamin also cried as he hugged him. Then, still weeping, in embraced each of his brothers and kissed them. After that, his brothers began to talk with him. Verse 16. When the news reached the palace that Joseph's brother had come, the king and his officials were pleased. He says to Joseph, tell your brothers to loose their animals and to return to the lands of Canaan. Let them get their father and their families and come back here. I will give them the best lands on Egypt, and they will have more than enough to live on. Tell them also to take wagons with them from Egypt for their wives and small children, and to bring them further with them. They are not worried about leaving their possessions behind. The best in the whole land of Egypt will be theirs. Jacob's sons did as they were told. Joseph gave them wagons and the kings had order and food for the trip. He also gave each of them in change of clothes, but he gave Benjamin 300 pieces of silver and 5 changes of clothes. He sent his father 10 donkeys loaded with the best Egyptian goods and 10 donkeys loaded with grains, bread, and other food for the trip. He sent his brother off, and as they left, he said to them, don't quarrel on the way. They left Egypt and went back home. Sorry, excuse me. To their father Jacob Canaan. Joseph is still alive, they told him. He is the ruler of all Egypt. Jacob was stunned and could not believe them. Verse 27, but when they told him all that Joseph had said to them, and when he saw the wagons which Joseph sent to take him to Egypt, he recovered from the shock. My son Joseph is still alive. He said, this is all I could ask for. I must go and see him before I die. Now let's translate this in Tagalog, Miss Friend. To all my friends and viewers, brother and sister. Nagpakilala na si Jose, Kabanata 55, talatang 1 hanggang 28.
28.
Hindi mapigil ni Jose ang kanyang damdamin kaya pinalis niya ang kanyang mga tagapaglingkod. Nang sila lamang naroon, ipinagtapat ni Jose sa kanyang kapatid kung sino siya. Sa lakas ng kanyang iyak, narinig siya ng mga Egyptio. Kaya ang balita ay mabilis na nakarating sa palas. Ako si Jose, ang pagtatapat niya sa kanyang mga kapatid. Buhay pa ba ang talaga ang ating ama? Nagulantang sila sa kanilang narinig at hindi nakasagot. Lumapit kayo, wika ni Jose. Lumapit nga sila at nagpatuloy siya ng pagsasalita. Ako nga si Jose, ang inyong kapatid na pinagbili niyo sa Egipto. Ngunit huwag na ninyong ikalungkot ang nangyari. Huwag na ninyong sisihin ang inyong sarili. Sa ginawa niyo sa akin, ang Diyos ang nagpadala sa akin dito upang iligtas ang inyong buhay. 2 taon pa lamang ang taggutom ng nakaraan. 5 pa ang darating at walang aanihin sa mga bukuri. Pinauna ako rito ng Diyos upang huwag malipol ang ating lahi. Dinala niya ako rito upang marami ang maligtas. Kaya't hindi kayo kundi ang Diyos ang nagpadala sa akin dito. Ginawa niya akong tagapayo ng Faraon, tagapangasiwa ng kanyang sambahayan at tagapamahala ng buong Egipto. Sinabi ni Jose, bumalik kayo agad sa ating ama at ibalitan niyo na ako'y pinamamahala ng Diyos sa buong Egipto. Sabihin niyo pumarito agad sa lalong madaling panahon. Doon siya titira sa lupain ng Gosen para mapalapit sa akin. Ang lahat niya, ang mga anak, mga apo at mga tupa, kambing, baka ay lahat ng inyong ari-ari ay kanyang dalhin. Doon mapapangalagaan ko kayo. 5 taon pa ang tagutom at hindi ko gustong makita ang sino man sa inyo na nagdarao, hindi na maikakaila sa inyo ngayon, maging kay Benjamin kung sino ang kausap nyo. Ibalita ninyo sa ating ama kung sino ako sa Egipto at sabihin nyo lahat ng inyong nakita. Hintayin ko siya sa lalong madaling panahon. Shoutout to Nico Black TV. Good morning po. Good morning.
Shoutout to Nico Black TV. Good morning po. Good morning.
Talata 6, 16, nakarating sa palasyo ang balita ng mga kapatid ni Jose ay dumating. Ikinagalak ito ng Faraon at ng kanyang mga kagawad. Sinabi ng Faraon kay Jose, pakargaan mo ang ng pagkain ng mga hayop ng inyong mga kapatid at pabalikin mo sila sa Kanaan. Sabihin mong dalhin dito ang inyong ama at ang buong sambayan nila. Bibigay ko sa kanila ang pinakamatabang lupain upang malasap nila ang masaganang pamumuhay rito. Sabihin mo rin, magdala na sila ng mga sasakyan para magamit ng kanilang mga asawa at mga anak paglipat sa Egipto. Huwag na nilang panghinayangan, iwanan ang kanilang ari-arian doon pagkat ang pinakamabuting lupain dito ang ibibigay ko sa kanila. Sinunod ng mga anak ng Israel ang utos ng ito. Binigyan sila ni Jose ng mga sasakyan gaya ng utos ng Faraon. Ipinadala din ng pagkain sa kanilang paglalakbay. Ang bawat isa ay binibigyan ng isang bisan maliban kay Benjamin. 5 ang kanyang bisan at pinadalan pa ng 300 pirasong pilak. Pinadalan pa niya ng kanyang ama ng pinakamabuting produkto ng Egipto. Karga ng 10 asno, 10 asno rin ang may kargang trigo, tinapay at iba pang pagkain upang mabaon ng kanilang ama sa paglalakbay. Inutusan ni Jose na lumakad ang kanyang mga kapatid, ngunit bago umalis ay sinabi sa kanila, huwag na kayo magtalo-talo sa daan. Umalis nga sila sa Egipto at umuwi sa Kanaan. Pagdating doon, sinabi nila kay Jacob, ama, buhay pa po si Jose. Siya ngayon ay namamahala sa buong Egipto. Natigilan si Jacob, halos hindi siya makapaniwala sa balitang ito. Ngunit nang maisalaysay sa kanya ang bilin ni Jose at makita ang mga karton ng sasakyan niya, sumigla ang kanyang kalooban. Salamat sa Diyos. Wika ni Jacob, buhay pa pala ang aking anak. Pupuntahan ko siya bago ako namatay. Bago ako mamamatay. Now let's proceed to book of Genesis
Let's proceed to
chapter
book of
46 verse
Genesis
1 to
chapter 46 verse 1 to
34.
34.
Jacob and his families go to Egypt.
Jacob and his families go to Egypt. Jacob and his families go to Egypt.
Book of Genesis chapter 46 verse 1. Jacob and his family go to Egypt. Jacob packed up all the hen
Genesis
and
chapter
went
46
to
verse 1. Jacob
Beersheba
and his
where he
family go to
offered
Egypt. Jacob
sacrifices
packed
to the
up
God
all
of
the
his
hen
father
and went
Isaac.
to
God
Beersheba
spoke to
where
him
he
in a
offered
visions at
sacrifices to
nights
the
and
God of
called
his father
Jacob,
Isaac.
Jacob.
God spoke to him
Yes,
in a
I'm here, he
visions at
answered. I
nights
am
and
God, the
called
God of your
Jacob,
father. He
Jacob.
said, do not be afraid to
Yes,
go
I'm
to
here,
Egypt. I
he
will
answered.
make
I
your
am God,
descendants
the
a
God
great
of your
nation
father.
there.
He said,
I
do
will
not
go
be
with
afraid
you
to go to Egypt. I
to
will make your
Egypt and I
descendants a
will
great
bring you
nation there.
descendants back
I
to
will
these
go with
lands.
you
Joseph
to
will be with you
Egypt and
when
I
you
will
die.
bring your descendants back to these lands.
Verse 5.
Joseph
Jacob set
will
out
be with
from
you
the Beersheba.
when
His
you die.
sons put him, their small children
Verse
and
5.
their
Jacob
wives
set
in
out
their
from the Beersheba,
wagons,
his sons
which
put
the
him,
kings of
their
Egypt
small children and their wives in their wagons, which the kings of Egypt
had sent. They took their livestock and the possessions they had acquired in Canaan and
had
sent
sent.
went to
They
Egypt.
took their
Jacob took
livestock and
all
the
his
possessions
descendants
they
with
had
him,
acquired
this
in
son,
Canaan, and
his
sent went
grandson,
to
his
Egypt.
daughters,
Jacob
and
took
his
all his descendants
granddaughters.
with him, his
The
son,
members
his
of Jacob's
grandson, his
family who
daughters,
went
and his
to Egypt
granddaughters.
with him were his older
The members
sons
of Jacob's
Reuben
family
and
who
Reuben's
went
sons Hanok,
to Egypt with him
Palu,
were his
Hezron,
older
and
sons
Carmi,
Reuben
Simeon and
and
his
Reuben's
sons
sons
Jemuel,
Hanok,
Jamin, Ohad, Jasin,
Palu, Hezron, and
Zokar, and
Carmi,
Shaul, the son
Simeon
of
and
the
his sons
Canaanite woman Levi
Jamin,
and his
Ohad,
sons
Jasin,
Gershon,
Zokar, and
Kohat,
Shaul,
and
the son of the
Merari.
Canaanite
Verse
woman
12,
Levi
Judah
and
and
his
his sons
sons
Shelah, Perez,
Gershon,
and Zerah.
Kohat,
Judah,
Levi, and
other
his
sons
sons.
heirs, and
Verse 12,
Onan had
Judah
died
and his
in
sons
Canaan.
Shelah,
Perez's
Perez,
sons were
Zerah,
Hezron
Judah,
and
other sons
Hamul,
heirs,
Issachar
and
and
Onan
his
had
son.
died in
Total
Canaan.
po
Perez's
Joshua
sons
and
were
Simron,
Hezron,
Zebulon and
total
his
po
sons
Issachar and his son.
Sered,
Total po
Elon, and
Joshua and
Jalil.
Simron,
There
Zebulon
are the
and his
sons
sons.
of that Leah had born
Sered,
to
Elon, and
Jacob
Jalil.
in
There are
Mesopotamia
the
beside
sons
his
of that
daughters
Leah had
Dinah
born to Jacob in Mesopotamia
in
beside his
all his
daughters
descendants by
Dinah.
Leah, Numbers 33.
In all his
Verse
descendants by
16,
Leah
God and his
numbers
sons,
33.
Zephon, Hagi, Shuni, Esbon,
Verse
Eri,
16,
Erod, and
God and his sons, Zebon, Hagi, Shuni, Esbon, Eri, Erod, and
Areli, Asher, his sons, Imna, Isba, Isbi, Beria,
Areli,
and their
Asher, his
sister
sons,
Sarah, Beria's sons
Imna,
were Heber
Isba,
and
Isbi, Beria,
Malkiel. These
and their
16
sister
are
Sarah,
the
Beriah's sons
descendants
were
of
Heber
Jacob
and
by Zilpah and the
Malkiel.
slave
These
Suman whom
16
Laban
are the descendants
gave
of
to his
Jacob
daughter Leah.
by Zilpah and the slave Zuman
Verse
whom Laban
19, Jacob's
gave to
wife
his
Rachel
daughter
bore
Leah.
him two sons, Joseph and
Verse
Benjamin. In
19,
Egypt, Joseph had
Jacob
two
wife
sons,
Rachel bore him
Manasseh and
two
Ephraim, by
sons, Joseph and Benjamin.
Senas, the
In
daughters of
Joseph had two
Potiphar, a
sons,
priest in
Manasseh and Ephraim by
the daughter of
Senas, the
Potiphar, a
daughters
priest
of
in
Potiphar, a priest
Heliopolis. Benjamin's sons were
the
Bela,
daughter of
Becher,
Potiphar's
Asbel,
priest
Gera,
in Heliopolis.
Naaman, Ehi,
Benjamin's sons
Ros,
were Bela,
Mupin,
Becher,
Hupim,
Asbel, Gera,
and Ard. These
Naaman,
14
Ehi,
are the
Ros,
descendants of
Mupin,
Jacob by
Hupim,
Rachel.
and
Verse
Ard.
23,
These 14 are the descendants of Jacob by
Dan and
Rachel.
his sons
Verse
Hushim,
23,
Naphtali, and
Dan
his
and his
sons
sons
Jazil,
Hushim,
Goni, Jezer, and
Naphtali,
Shilem. These seven are the
and
descendants
his
of
sons
Jacob by
Jazil, Goni,
Bilhah,
Jezer,
the
and
slave woman's
Shilem.
womb
These
Labas
seven
gave
are
to
the
his daughter
descendants of
Rachel.
Jacob by Bilhah. The
The
slave
total
woman's
numbers
womb
of the direct
Labas gave
descendants
to
of
his
Jacob
daughter
who
Rachel.
sent to Egypt was
The
66 nuts,
total numbers
including
of
his
the
sons'
direct
wives.
descendants of
Two
Jacob
sons
who
were
sent
born
to
to
Egypt
Joseph in
was
Egypt, in
66
bringing
sons,
to
including his sons'
70
wives.
the total
Two sons
numbers
were
of
born to
Jacob's
Joseph in
family
Egypt, bringing to
who sent went
70
there.
the total numbers of Jacob's family
Jacob and his family in Egypt.
who sent went there.
Verse 28,
Jacob and
Jacob
his
sends
family
Judah
in
ahead to
Egypt.
ask Joseph to meet them in Goshen. When they
Verse
arrived,
28,
Joseph got
Jacob
into
sends
his
Judah
chariot
ahead
and
to
went
ask
to
Joseph
Goshen
to meet them
to meet his father. When they met, Joseph threw his arms around his father, neck, and cried for a long time. Jacob says to Joseph, I am ready to die now that I have seen you alive. Then Joseph says to his brothers and the rest of his father's family, I must go and tell the king that my brothers and all my brothers' family who were living in Canaan have come to me. I will tell him that you are a shepherd and take care of livestock, and that you have brought your flocks and herd and everything else that belongs to you. When the king calls for you and asks what your occupations, be sure to tell him that you have taken care of livestock all your lives, just your ancestor did. In this way, he will let you live in the regions of Goshen. Joseph said, this because of Egyptian will have nothing to do with shepherd. Now, let's translate this in Tagalog, brothers and sisters, chapter 46 of Genesis 46, talata 1 hanggang 34. Nagpunta sa Egipto ang buong sambahayan ni Jacob. Lumakad nga si Israel, dala ang kanyang ari-arian. Pagdating sa Beersheba, nagandog siya sa Diyos ng kanyang amang si Isaac. Pagsapit ng gabi, tinawag siya ni Jacob. Pagsapit ng gabi, tinawag siya ng Diyos sa isang pangitain. Jacob, Jacob, nakikinig po ako, tugon niya. Verse 3, ako ang Diyos ng iyong umawi ka sa kanya, huwag kayong matakot na pumunta sa Egipto, doon ang lahi mong magiging isang malaking bansa, samahan ko kayo. Roon at ibabalik na muli rito na sa piling mo si Jose pag ikaw ay namatay. Verse 5, mula sa Beersheba naglakbay si Jacob, siya at ang kanyang mga apo at ang manugang ay sinakay ng kanyang mga anak sa mga karitong ipinadala ng Faraon. Dinala rin nila sa Egipto ang mga hayop at ari-arian nila sa Kanaan. Kasama nga niya ang kanyang mga anak, mga manugang at mga apo. Ito ang tala ng angka ni Israel na nagpunta sa Egipto. Si Jacob at ang kanyang mga anak at mga apo. Si Ruben ang kanyang mga panganay at ang mga anak nitong sina Enoch, Phalu, Hezron at Carmi. Si Simeon at ang mga anak nitong sina Jemuel, Samin, Ohad, Jakin, Zohar at Saul. Saul na anak ng babaeng Kananea. Si Levi at ang mga anak nitong sina Gerson, Koat at Merari. Si Juda at ang mga anak nitong sina Sela, Fares at Zara. Si Er at Ona na namatay sa Kanaan. Ang mga anak ni Fares na sina Hezron at Hamul. Si Isaacar at ang mga anak nitong sina Tola, Pua, Job at Simron. Si Zabulon at ang mga anak nitong sina Sered, Elzon at Jail. Ito ang mga anak na atapo ni Jacob kay Leah na pawang ipinanganak sa Mesopotamia. Kabilang dito si Dina, ang anak ng dalaga ni Jacob. 33 silang lahat. Kasama rin sa talang ito si Gad at ang mga anak nito na sina Zivio, Hagui, Suni, Esbon, Eri, Arudi at Arili. Si Aser ang mga anak nito sina Jimna, Iswa, Isui, Beria at ang mga babaeng kapatid nila si Sera. Ang mga anak ni Beria at sina Herber at Malkiel. Ang mga anak at mga apo ni Jacob kay Zilpa at ang ibinigay ni Laban kay Leah ay 16. Kabilang din ng talaang ito ang mga anak ng mga apo ni Jacob kay Raquel, sina Jose at Benjamin, sina Manases at Ephraim, mga anak ni Jose kay Asenat, anak ni Potiphar na saserdote sa Heliopolis. Ang dalawang ito'y sa Egipto isinilang. Ang mga anak ni Benjamin na sina Bela, Biker, Asbel, Jeranaaman, Ehiros, Mupin, Hupin or Ard. 14 na mga anak ng mga apo ni Jacob kay Raquel. Kabilang pa rin dito si Dan at ang bugtong niyang anak na si Husim, si Neptali at ang mga anak nito na sina Jazil, Guni, Jeser at Selem. Ito ang mga anak at mga apo ni Jacob kay Bilha, ang iliping ibinigay ni Laban kay Raquel. Anim na anim ang mga anak ng mga apo ni Jacob at nagpunta sa Egipto. Hindi kabilang dito ang kanyang mga manugang. Dalawa ang naging anak ni Jose sa Egipto, kaya ang kabuang bilang ng sambahayan ni Jacob na natipon doon ay 70 po. 70. Si Jacob at ang kanyang sambayan sa Egipto. Si Juda ang sinugo ng Israel kay Jose upang siya'y salubungin. Dali-dali pinadala ni Jose ang kanyang sasakyan niya at sinalubong ang kanyang ama sa Gosen. Nang sila'y nagkita, agad niya niyakap ang kanyang ama at napayak siya sa tuwa. Sinabi naman ni Israel, ngayon handa na akong mamatay pagkat nakita na kitang buhay. Sinabi ni Jose sa kanyang mga kapatid at sa buong sambayan ni Jacob, ibabalita ko sa Faraon na dumating na kayo buhat sa Kanaan. Sabihin ko kayo'y mga pastol na dala nyo ang inyong mga kawan at lahat ninyong ari-arian. Kung ipatawag ka ng Faraon at tanungin kung anong ginawa ang inyong gagawin, sabihin nyo kayo'y mga alaga ng mga baka buhat sa pagkabata tulad ng inyong mga ninong. Sa gayon, makapanahan kayo sa lupain ito. Ganito ang sabi niya sapagkat ang mga yatag ito'y namumuhi sa mga pastol. Now let's proceed to book of Genesis chapter 47 verse 1 up to 31. Book of Genesis 47. So Joseph took 5 of his brother and went to the king. He told him, my father and my brothers have come from Canaan with their flocks, their herds, and all that they own. They are now in the region of Goshen. He then presented his brother to the king. The king asked them, what is your occupation? We are shepherds, sir, just as our ancestors were. They answered, we have come to live in this country because in the land of Canaan the famine is so severe that there is no pasture for our flocks. Please give us permissions to live in the regions of Goshen. The king says to Joseph, now that your father and your brothers have arrived, the land of Egypt is there. Let them settle in the region of Goshen, the best part of the land. And if there are capable men among them, put them in charge of my own livestock. Then Joseph brought his father Jacob and presented him to the king. Jacob gave the king his blessing, and the king asked him, how old are you? Jacob answered, my life wandering has lasted as 130 years. Those years have been few and difficult, unlike the long years of my ancestors in their wanderings. Jacob gave the king his farewell blessing and left them. Joseph settled his father with his brother in Egypt, giving them a property in the best of the land of near to the city of promises, as the king had commanded. Joseph provided food his father, his brothers, and all the rest of his father's family, including the very youngest. The famine. The famine was so severe that there was no food anywhere, and the people of Egypt and Canaan became weak with hunger. As they bought grains, Joseph collected all the money and took it into palace. When all the money in Egypt and Canaan was spent, the Egyptians came to Joseph and said, give us food, don't let us die. Do something, our money is all gone. Joseph answered, bring your livestock, I will give you food in exchange for it. If your money is all gone, so they brought their livestock to Joseph, and he gave them food in exchange for their horses, sheep, goats, cattle, and donkeys. That year, he has supplied them with food in exchange for all their livestock. The following years they came to him and said, "We will not hide the fact from you, sirs, that your money is all gone and your livestock belongs to you. There is nothing left to give you except our bodies and our lands. Don't let us die, do something. Don't let our fields be deserted by us and our land in exchange for food. We will be the king's slave, and he will own our lands, give us grains to keep us alive, and seeds so that we can plant our field." Joseph bought all the land in Egypt for the king. Every Egyptian was forced to sell his lands because the famine was so severe, and all the lands became the king's property. Joseph made his slave own the people from one end of Egypt to others. The only lands he did not buy was the land that belongs to the priests. They did not have to sell their lands because the kings gave them all allowance to live on. Joseph says to the people, "You see, I have now both you and your lands for the king. Here seed for you sow in your field. At the time of harvest, you must give one fifth to the king. You can use the rest of for the seed and for food for yourself and your families." They answer, "You have saved our lives. You have been good to us, sir, and we will be the king's slave." So Joseph made in a law for the land of Egypt that one fifth of the harvest should belong to the king. This law still remains in force today. Only the lands of the priests did not become the king's property. Jacob last request. The Israelites lived in Egypt in the region of Goshen, where they became rich and had many children. Jacob lived in Egypt 70 years until he was 147 years old. When the times drew near for him to die, he called for his sons Joseph and said to him, "Place your hand between my tithes and make solemn vow a solemn that you will not bury me in Egypt. I want to be buried where my fathers are. Carry me out of Egypt. Bury me where they are buried." Joseph answered, "I will do as you will say." Jacob said, "Make a vow that you will." Joseph made the vow, and Jacob gave thanks there on in his bed. Now let's translate it in Tagalog. Book of Genesis 47. Isinama ni Jose ang sa kanyang mga kapatid sa Paraon. Sinabi niya, "Dumating na po ang aking ama at mga kapatid buwad sa Kanaan. Dala ang kanilang mga kawan at lahat ng ari-arian. Naroon po sila ngayon sa Gosen at iniharap niya sa Paraon ang kanyang mga kapatid." Tinanong sila ng Paraon, "Ano ang trabaho ninyo?" "Kami po ay mga pastol tulad ng aming mga ninuno," tugon nila. "Napadako po kami rito sapagkat sa amin sa Kanaan ay wala na kaming mapapastulan. Kung maaari po, doon na ninyo kami patilin sa lupain ng Gosen." Sinabi ng Paraon kay Jose, "Narito na ang inyong ama at mga kapatid. Yamang ikaw ang namamahala sa buong Egipto, ibigay mo na sa kanila ang pinakamainam na lupain. Doon mo sila patirhan sa Gosen. Kung may mapipili kang mahusay na pasto, sila ang pamahalain mo sa kanilang mga kawan." Isinama ni Jose ang kanyang ama sa palasyo, at pagdating doon, pinasbasan ni Jacob ang Faraon. "Ilang taon na kayo?" tanong ni Faraon kay Jacob. Sumagot siya, "Ako po ay 130 taon na. Maikli at mahirap ang aking naging buhay dito sa lupa. Malayong-layo na sa naging buhay ng aking mga ninuno." Matapos magpaalam si Faraon, umalis na si Jacob sa utos ng Faraon. Ibinigay ni Jose ang kanyang ama sa mga kapatid at ang mga pinakabuting lupain na Rameses sa bansang ito, Egipto. Ang buong sambahayan ng Jacob hanggang sa kalitlitan ay kanila at kinalingan ni Jose. Ang pamamahala ni Jose sa panahon ng mga tagutom. Nang maubos na ang pagkain sa buong Kanaan at Egipto at ang mga tao hirap na hirap sa gutom, kaya siya bumili ng pagkain ng lahat. Tinitipon naman ni Jose ang pinagbilihan at dinila sa kanilang kabangyamang ni Faraon. Dumati ang panahon wala nang may bayad ang mga tao kaya sinabi nila kay Jose, mamamatay kami ng gutom, bigyan mo kami ng pagkain. Kung wala na kayong salapi, wika ni Jose, hayop na lamang ang ipalit ninyo sa pagkain ibibigay ko sa inyo. At gayon nga ang kanilang ginawa. Ipinagpalit nila ang kanilang mga kabayo, tupa at kambing, baka at asno sa pagkain kinukuha nila. Isang tao silang binibigyan ni Jose ng pagkain bilang kapalit ng mga hayop. Nang sumunod na taon, lumapit naman sa kanyang mga tao, sinabi na hindi namin may kakaila sa iyong kamahalan na ngayon ubos na ang lahat namin salapi at mga hayupan. Wala pong nalalabi sa amin kundi ang aming katawan at bukirin. Kaya tulungan naman ninyo kami, wag na ninyo kaming bayaang mamatay ng, ng gutom at magtiwangwang ang aming lupain. Bigyan nyo kami ng makakain at binhi ng pananim ng kami. Huwag mamatay. Payag na po kaming maging alipin ng Paraon at masangla sa kanya ang aming lupain. Nangyari nga ito kaya't nakuha ni Jose para sa Paraon ang lahat ng lupain ng mga taga-Egipto dahil sa tindi ng tagutom. Ang lahat ng tao ng Egipto ay naging alipin ng Paraon. Ang hindi lamang nabibili ni Jose ang lupain ng mga saserdote sapagkat ang mga ito ay may sapat na sustento ng Paraon. Sinabi ni Jose ng mga tao ngayon, nabili ko na kayo at ang inyong mga lupain para sa Paraon. Bigyan ko kayo ng binhing itatanim. Ibigay nyo na Paraon ng ikalimang bahagi ng inyong aanihin sa inyong mga nalalabi para itanim muli ang maging pagkain ng inyong sambahayan. Huling habili ni Jacob. Ang mga Israelita ay yumaman sa Egipto at dumami ang kanilang mga lahi. 17 taong tumira roon si Jacob at tumabot siya ng 147 taon. Nang maramdaman niyang malapit na siyang mamatay, tinawag ni Jose at sinabi, iligay mo sa pagitan ng aking mga hita ang iyong kamay at ipangako mong magiging tapat ka sa akin. Hindi mo ako ililibing sa Egipto. Ipipisan mo ako sa libingan ng aking mga magulang. Masusunod po ang nais ninyo, tugon ni Jose. Sinabi ni Jacob, kung gayon, tumumpa ka sa akin. Nanumpas nga si Jose at si Jacob ay umuko at may ulunan ng higaan. Now, let's proceed to Book of Genesis, chapter 48, verse 1 up to 22. Jacob blessed Ephraim and Manasseh. Book of Genesis, chapter 48, verse 1. Jacob blessed Ephraim and Manasseh. Sometimes later, Joseph was told that his father was ill, so he took his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, and went to see Jacob. When Jacob was told that his sons Joseph had come to see him, he gathered his strength and sat up in bed. Jacob says to Joseph, Almighty God has appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan and bless me, he said. He said to me, I will give you many children so that your descendants will become many nations. I will give this land to your descendants as their possession forever. Jacob continues, Joseph, your two sons who were born to you in Egypt before I came here belong to me. Ephraim and Manasseh are just as much my son as Reuben and Simeon. If you have any more sons, they will not be considered mine. The inheritance they get will come through Ephraim and Manasseh. I am doing this because of your mother Rachel to make the great sorrow. She died in the land of Canaan, not far from Ephrat, as I was returning from Mesopotamia. I buried her here beside the road to Ephrat. Ephrat is now known as Bethlehem. When Jacob saw Joseph's son, he asked, Who are these boys? Joseph answered, These are my sons whom God has given me
are
here
my
in
sons
Egypt.
whom God has given
Jacob
me
says, bring them to me so that I may bless them.
Jacob
Jacob's
says, bring them
eyesight
to me so
was
that I may
failing
bless them.
because of his
Jacob's
age,
eyesight
and he could not see
was failing
very well.
because of his
Joseph
age,
brought the
and he
boys
could
to
not
him,
see
and he
very
hugged
well.
them and
Joseph
kissed
brought the
them.
boys to him,
Jacob says to
and
Joseph,
he
I
hugged them
never
and
expected
kissed
to
them.
see you again,
Jacob says to
and now
Joseph,
God
I
has
never
even let me
expected to
see
see
your
you again,
children.
and now
Then
God
Joseph took them
even let
from
me see your
Jacob's lap
children.
and bowed
Then
down
Joseph took
before
them
him with
from
his
Jacob's
face
lap
to
and bowed down
the ground.
before him with his
Joseph put
face to
Ephraim at Jacob
the
left and
ground.
Manasseh
Joseph put
at his
Ephraim
right,
at
but
Jacob
Jacob
left and
crossed his
Manasseh
hand and put
at
his
his
right
right,
hand
but
of the
Jacob
head of
crossed his
Ephraim,
hand
even
and
though
put his
he
right
was
hand
the younger,
of the
and
head
his
of
left
Ephraim, even
hand
though
on the
he
head
was the
of
younger
Manasseh.
and his
Who
left
was the older
hand
then he
on the head
blessed Joseph.
of Manasseh. Who
My
was the
God, who
older
my
than
father
he blessed
Abraham,
Joseph?
Isaac, sir, bless
My
these
God, who
boys.
my father
May God,
Abraham,
who
Isaac,
has led
sir,
me
bless
to this
these
very day,
boys.
bless them.
May God, who has
Verse
led
16,
me
may
to
the
this
angel who
very
was
day, bless
rescued
them.
me from the
Verse 16,
all
may the
harm,
angel who was
bless them.
rescued me from
My,
the all harm, bless
my
them.
name and the name of my fathers Abraham and Isaac's life
In the name of my
on through
fathers
these
Abraham
boys.
and
May
Isaac's
they
life,
have many children,
on
many
through these boys.
descendants.
May they have many children, many descendants.
Joseph was upset when he saw that his
Joseph,
father had put
who
his
was
right hand
upset when he saw
on
that his
Ephraim's head
father
to
had
see
put his right hand on
head.
Ephraim's
He took his father hand to move it
head.
from
So
Ephraim
he took his
head to the
father
head
hand
of
to move it
Manasseh. He
from
said to his
Ephraim
father,
head to the
not the
head
way,
of
father,
Manasseh.
this
He
is the
said to
older
his
boy, you
father,
put
not the
your
way,
right
father,
hand
this
on
is
his
the
head.
older boy. You
His
put
father refused, say,
your
I
right
know,
hand on
son.
his head. His
I
father
know
refused,
Messiah
say, I
descendants
know,
will
son.
also become a great
I
people,
know
but
Messiah
his younger
descendant will
brother
also
will be
become a
greater
great
than
people,
he,
but
and the
his
descendants
younger
will
brother
become
will be greater
great
than he,
nation.
and the
So
descendants will
bless
become
them that
great
day,
nation.
saying, the Israelites
So
will
bless them
use your
that
names.
day, saying,
When
the
they
Israelites
pronounce
will
blessings, they
use
will
your
say,
names.
my
When
God,
they
may you,
pronounce
like
blessings, they
Ephraim
will
and
say,
Manasseh.
my God,
In
may
this way,
you like
Jacob put
Ephraim and
Ephraim
Manasseh.
before Manasseh.
In this way,
Then
Jacob
Jacob
put
says to
Ephraim
Joseph,
before
as you see,
Manasseh.
I am about to
Then
die,
Jacob says to
but God will
Joseph,
be
as
with
you
you
see,
and
I
will
am
take
about
you
to
back
die,
to
but
the
God will
land
be with you
of your
and take you
ancestors.
back
It is
to
to
the
you
land
and not to your
of your
brothers
ancestors.
that I am
It is
giving
to
you
you
Shechem,
and not
that
to your
fertile
brothers
region
that I
which
am
I took
giving you
from the
Shechem, that
Amorites
fertile
with
region
my swords
which I
and my
took
bow.
from the Amorites with my swords and my bow.
Now let's translate
Now let's
Book
translate
of Genesis chapter 48
Book of
o
Genesis
Kabanata
chapter
48.
48
Let's translate in
o
Tagalog.
Kabanata 48.
Binasbasa ni
Let's
Jacob
translate
sina
in Tagalog.
Ephraim at Manasseh.
Binasbasa ni Jacob sina Ephraim
Manases.
at Manasseh.
Kabanata
Manasseh.
48,
Kabanata 48.
talata isa, nabalita ni Jose na may sakit ang kanyang ama,
Isa,
kaya't
nabalita ni Jose
isinama
na
niya ang
may
dalawang
sakit ang
anak na
kanyang ama,
lalaki, sina
kaya't
Manases at
isinama
Ephraim,
niya ang dalawang
at
anak na
dinalawang
lalaki,
matanda.
sina
Nang
Manasseh
sabihin
at
kay
Ephraim,
Jacob na
at
dumating si Jose,
dinalawang
nagpilit
matanda.
siya
Nang
bumangon at
sabihin kay
naupo sa
Jacob na
kanyang
dumating
higaan.
si Jose, nagpilit
Sinabi niya
siya
kay Jose,
bumangon at
nang
naupo sa
ako'y
kanyang higaan. Sinabi niya kay Jose, nang
nasa
ako'y
luz, napakita sa akin ng Diyos na
nasa loob,
makapangyarihan sa lahat at
napakita sa
binasbasan
akin
ako.
ng Diyos
Sinabi
na
niya kay
makapangyarihan sa lahat
nadarami
at
ang aking mga
binasbasan ako.
anupat ang
Sinabi
aking
niya,
lahi ay magiging isang
nadarami ang
malaking
aking mga
bansa
anupat ang
at ang
aking
aking
lahi
lahi magiging
magiging
malaking
isang
bansa
malaking
at
bansa
ibibigay
at ang
niya
aking
sa
lahi
kanila ang
magiging
lupain
bansa
ninyo
at
habang
ibibigay
panahon.
niya
Ang
sa
dalawang
kanila
mong
ang
anak
lupain
ay
ninyo habang
isinilang
panahon.
dito sa
Ang
Egipto
dalawang
bago
mong
ako
anak ay
dumating ay
isinilang dito sa
ibibilang
Egipto
sa aking
bago
mga
ako
anak, kaya
dumating
tulad
ay
nila
ibibilang
nina
sa
Ruben
aking
at
mga
Simeon,
anak kaya
sina
tulad
Efraim at
nila
Manasseh ay magiging
nina Ruben at
tagapamana
Simeon,
ko
sina
rin.
Efraim at Manasseh
Ngunit
ay magiging
ang susunod mong
tagapamana
mga
ko
anak ay
rin.
mananatiling
Ngunit
iyo at
ang susunod
ibibilang
mong
na
mga
lamang
anak
sa
ay
lipi ng
mananatiling iyo at
dalawa nilang kapatid.
ibibilang na
Ipinasya
lamang
ko
sa lipi ng
ito alang-alang
dalawa
kay
nilang
Raquel na
kapatid.
iyong ina.
Ipinasya ko
Nang
ito
ibalik ako
alang-alang
buhat
kay
sa
Raquel na
Mesopotamia,
iyong ina.
namatay siya sa
Nang ibalik
Kanaan,
ako buhat sa
malapit sa Ebrata.
Mesopotamia,
At
namatay siya
inamdam
sa
ko ng
Kanaan,
labis ang kanyang
malapit sa Ebrata.
pagpanaw.
At
Doon
inamdam ko
ko
ng
na
labis
siya
ang kanyang
inilibing ang
pagpanaw.
Eprata ay
Doon
isang
ko
Bethlehem.
na siya inilibing ang Ebrata ay isang Bethlehem.
Pagkakita ni Israel sa mga anak ni Jose, tinanong ito,
Pagkakita
ito
ni
bang
Israel
iyong
sa mga
mga
anak
anak?
ni Jose, tinanong
Opo, sila
ito
po
ba
ang
ang iyong
pinagkaloob
mga
sa
anak?
akin ng Diyos dito sa
Opo,
Egipto,
sila po
tugon
ang
niya.
pinagkaloob sa
Sinabi
akin
ni
ng
Israel,
Diyos
ilapit
dito
mo
sa
sila sa
Egipto,
akin at
tugon niya.
basbasan ko.
Sinabi ni
Halos
Israel, ilapit
hindi
mo
na
sila sa akin
makakita nun
at
si Israel
basbasan ko.
dahil sa kanyang
Halos
katanda.
hindi na
Nilapit nga ni Jose ang mga bata at sila niyakap at hinigkan ng matanda. Sinabi ni Israel kay Jose, wala na akong pag-asang makakita pa. Ngayon nakita ko pati iyong mga anak. Inalis ni Jose ang mga bata sa kandungan ni Israel at yumuko siya sa harapan nito. Pagkatapos inilapit niya matanda ang dalawang bata, si Ephraim sa gawing kaliwa at si Manase sa gawing kanan nito. Ngunit pinagkukrus ni Jacob ang kanyang kamay at ipinatong ang kanan sa ulo ng nakababatang si Ephraim at ang kaliwa sa ulo ni Manase at sila'y binasbasan. Pagpalain nawa kayo ng palagi subaybayan ng Diyos na tinalima ni Isaac at ni Abraham. Niyon yung Diyos na siyang aking nangalagat, umatnubay simula sa pagkabata magpahanggang ngayon, at pati na yaong anghel na sa akin ay nagligtas. Pagpalain nawa kayo, tanggapin ang kanyang basbas, ang ngalan ko at ang ngalan ni Abraham at ni Isaac. Maingatan nawa ninyo at taglayin oras-oras. Nawa kayo ay lumagot, dumami at lumaganap. Nang makita niyo siyang ginawa ng kanyang ama, hinawakan niya ang kanang kamay nito upang ilipat sa ulo ni Manases. Wika niya, ito po ang matanda ama sa kanyang patong inyong kanang kamay. Ngunit sinabi niyo, alam mo po iyan anak, alam kong magiging dakila si Manases pati ang kanyang mga anak. Ngunit lalong magiging dakila ang nakababata niyang kapatid. Ang kanyang lahi ay magiging dakilang mga bansa. Sinabi niya ito, yaong mga Israelita sa Diyos ang hinihilingin, yamang kayo pinagpala, sila may pagpalain din. Sa kanilang kahilingan ganito ang sasabihin, kayo naway matulad kay Ephraim at Manase. Yan ang nangyari kung paano nauna si Ephraim kay Manase. Pagkatapos nito sinabi ni Israel, Ose, ako'y mamamatay na, ngunit huwag kang mababahala sa sayo ang Diyos, at ako'y ibabalik niya sa lupay ng iyong mga ninuno. Ikaw ang tanging magmamana ng Sikem na natamo ko sa pakikipagbaka laban sa mga Amoreo. Ay, Lord, thank you, Lord God. Now, let's proceed to book of Genesis, chapter 49, the last words of Jacob. Jacob's called for his sons and says, gather around and I will tell you what will happen to you in the future. Come together and listen, sons of Jacob, listen to your father Israel. Reuben, my firstborn, you are my strength and the first child of my manhood, the proudest and strongest of all my sons. You are like a raging floods, but you will not be the most important. For you slept with my concubine and dishonor your father. Led Simeon and Levi are brothers. They use their weapons to commit violence. I will not join in their secret talks, nor will take in part of their meetings. For they kill people in anger, and they cripple bulls and sport. A curse be on their anger because it's so fierce, and on their fury because it is so cruel. I will scatter them throughout the land of Israel. I will disperse them among its people. Judah, your brothers will praise you. You hold your enemies by the neck. Your brothers will bow down before you. Judah is like a lion killing his victim and returning to his den. Is stretching out and lying down. No one's there disturb him. Judah will hold the royal scepter and his descendants will always rule. Nation will bring tribute and how in obedience before him. He ties his young donkey to a grapevine, to the very best of the vines. He washes his clothes, his blood red wine. His eyes are bloodshot from drinking wine. His teeth white from drinking milk. Zebulun will lie beside the sea. His shore will be a heaven for sheep. His territory will reach as far as Sidon. Issachar is no better than a donkey that lies stretched out between his saddlebags. Verse 15, but he sees the resting place is good, and that is the land of delightful, so he bends his back to carry the load. And is forced to work as slave. Dan will be ruler for his people. They will like others, the tribe of Israel. Dan will be a snake at the sides of the road, a poisonous snake besides the path that is strike and the horse heel, so that the rider is thrown off backward. Verse 18, I wait for you, deliverance, Lord. God will be attacked by band of robbers, but will return pursue them. Asher lands will produce rich food. He will provide food fit for a king. Naphtali is a deer runs free, who bears love fawn. Joseph is like a wild donkey by a spring, a wild called on a hillside. His enemy attacked his firstly and pursued him with their bows and arrows, but his bow remains steady and his arms are made strong by the power of the mighty gods of Jacob, by the shepherd and the protector of Israel. It is your Father God who helps you, the Almighty God who blesses you with blessings of rain from above and of deep waters from beneath the grounds, blessings of many cattle and children, blessings of grains and flowers, blessings of ancients, mountains, delightful things from everlasting hills. May these blessings rest off the heads of Joseph on the brow of the one set apart from this brother. Benjamin is like vicious wolf. Morning and evening he kills and devours. The death of burial of Jacob, verse 29. Then Jacob commanded his sons, now that I'm going to join my people in death, bury me with my fathers in the cave that is the field of Ephron the Hittite, at Machpelah, east of Mamre, in the land of Canaan. Abraham bought this cave and field from Ephron for a burial ground. That is where they buried Abraham and his wife Sarah. That is where they buried Isaac and his wife Rebekah. And that is where I buried Leah. The field and the cave, it is where both from the Hittite buried me there. When Jacob had finished giving instructions to his sons, he lay back down and died. Alright. Thank you, Lord God Jesus. Now let's translate this in Tagalog, Book of Genesis, chapter 49. Apat na po, book, Genesis, o Genesis, apat na po siyam, talata 1 hanggang 33. Ang hula ni Jacob sa kanyang mga anak. Talata 1, ipinatawag ni Kabanata 49, talata 1, ipinatawag ni Jacob ang kanyang mga anak at sinabi, lumapit kayo sa akin at sabihin ko sa inyo ang inyong hinaharap. Kayo mga anak magsilapit sa akin. Ako ang iyong amang sumandaling dinggin. Si Ruben ang aking panganay na anak, sa lahat kong supling ay pinakamalakas, mapusok ang loob, baha ang katulad. Ang bawat madaan ay nanunumbulat. Sa kabila nito, hindi ka sisikat, hindi mangunguna, hindi magtatanyag, pagkat ang ama mo ay ang iyong inamak, dangal ng asawa ang iyong winasak. Kayong magkapatid ni Simeon at Levi, ang sandatan nyo'y ipinandudughagi. Sa usapan nyo, hindi ako sasali sa inyong gawain, hindi babahagi kapag nagagalit agad, pumapatay, lumpo, pati hayop kung makatuwaan. Kayo susumpain sa bangis at galit sa ugali niyo'y na mapagmalabis. Kayo'y mga ngalat sa buong lupain, sa buong Israel, at ay pangangalatin. Ikaw naman, Juda, ay pupurihan niyo mga anak na ina mong mahal, hawak mo sa leeg ang iyong kaaway, lahat mong kapatid sa iyong gagalang. Mabangis na leon ang iyong larawan, muling nagkukubli matapos pamatayan tulad ni Juda, leong mahimlay, walang mga has lumapit sinuman. Hawak niya setro tuon sa paanan, sa gisag ng lakas at kapangyarihan. Ito'y tataglayin hanggang dumatal, ang tunay na haring dito'y magtatangan. Yaong batang asno doon manatili sa puno ng ubas na tanging pinili, sa alak ng ubas, sa luban ng matapang mga damit niya ay doon nilalabnan. Matay namumula dahil sa alak, ngipi pumuputi sa inuming gatas. Talatang 13. Sa baybaying dagat doon ka Zabulon, ang sasakyan dagat sa iyo kakalong, ang iyong lupa'y aabot sa Sidon. Malakas na aso ayon kay Isaacar, ngunit sa kulungan ka malulumagak. Nang kanyang makita yaong pahingat ang lupain do'y tunay na mainam, tiniis niya makuba sa pasan, napaalipin na kahit mapahirap. Si Dan ay magiging isang pangunahing katulad ng ibang puno ng Israel. Ahas na mabagsik sa tabi ng daan na handang tuklawin kabayang daratal upang maihulog yaong taong sakay.
Daratal upang maihulog yaong taong sakay.
Sa pagliligtas mo, Diyos, maghihintay,
Sa pagliligtas mo, Diyos,
haharangin sigad
maghihintay,
ng mga tulisan, lalabanan niya
sigad
at
ng mga tulisan,
magtatakbuhan.
lalabanan
Ang
niya
bukid ni Aser ay pag-aanihan ng mga pagkain ng taong marangal. Si Neptali naman ay tulad ng usa malaya ang dalang balita maganda. Si Jose ay asno ang nakakaparis, mailap na asno sa tabi ng batis, kabayong mailap sa may bundok, libis, mga ngaso ang nagpapahirap, hinahabol siya ng palaso, sibat. Subalit nawasak ang kanilang busog, matipunong bisig ay naghina ng hinang lubos. Ang dahilan nito'y ang Diyos ni Jacob, pastol ng Israel, matibay na muog. Talata 25. Diyos ang iyong ama, siyang sasaklolo, ang dakilang Diyos na magbabasbas sa iyo, magbuhat sa langit, bubuhos ang ulan, malalim na tubig sa lupa, bubukal dibdib na malusog, pati baha, batay, pagpapalay, hindi kaya't pagbasbasan. Talata 26. Darami ang ani bulaklak, gayon din maalamat na bundok ay pagpapalain, pati mga burol na magkakamit-ali. Pagpapalang ito ng awa ay makamit ni Jose na wala sa mga kapatid. Tulad ni Benjamin, lobong pumapatay, sumisila ito ng inaalmusal. Kung gabi ay huli, pinaghahatian. Ito ang 12 anak ni Israel at gayon sila pinagpala ng kanilang ama at ayon sa magiging hinaharap nila. Namatay at inilibing si Jacob. Pagkatapos sinabi ni Jacob sa kanyang mga anak, ngayon papanaw na ako upang mapisan sa mga kasamang na mayapa na. Doon niyo ako ilibing sa pinaglibingan ng aking mga magulang sa yungib sa tapat ng bukid ng Eprong Heteo. Ang ilibingan iyo'y nasa silangan ng Mamre sa may Kanaan. Binili iyon ni Abraham at doon sila inilibing, pati ang kanyang asawang si Sarah. Doon din inilibing ang mag-asawang Isaac at Rebecca. Doon ko rin ililibing si Leah. Ang bukid at yungib na iyo'y binili na nga sa mga Hiteo. Matapos masabi ang lahat ng ito, siya'y nalagutan ng hininga. Oh Lord, thank you, Lord of God, Jesus. Thank you. Now, let's proceed to Book of Genesis 50, the last chapter of Book of Genesis. Chapter 50, verse 1 up to 26. Book of Genesis, chapter 50, verse 1. Joseph threw himself on his father, crying and kissing his face. Then Joseph gave order to embalm his father's body. It took 40 days to the normal time for embalming. The Egyptians mourned for him 70 days. When the time of mourning was over, Joseph says to the king's official, please take this message to the king. When my father was about to die, he made me promise him that I would bury him in the tomb which he had prepared in the land of Canaan. So please let me go and bury my father, and then I will come back. The king answered, go and bury your father as you promised you would. So Joseph went to bury his father. All the king's officials, the senior men of his court, and all the leading men of Egypt went with Joseph. His family, his brothers, and the rest of his father's family all went with him. Only their small children and their sheep, goats, and cattle stay in the regions of Goshen's, men in chariots and men of horseback. Also went with him. It was a huge group. When they came to the threshing place at Atad, east of the Jordan, they mourned loudly for a long time, and Joseph performed mourning ceremonies for 7 days. When the citizens of Canaan saw those people mourning at Atad, they said, with a solemn ceremony of mourning the Egyptians are holding. That is why the place was named Abel Mizraim. So Jacob's sons did had commanded them. So they carried his body to Canaan and buried him in the cave of Macpela, east of Mamre, the field which Abraham had bought from Ephron to Hittite for a burial ground. After Joseph has buried his father and returned to Egypt with his brother and his all who had gone with him for the funeral. Joseph resurrect his brother. Uh, Joseph reassure his brother. I'm sorry. Joseph reassured his brother. Verse 15. After the death of their father, Joseph's brother said, "What if Joseph still hates us and plans to pay us back for all the harms we did to him?" So they sent a message to Joseph. "Before our father died, he told us to ask you, please forgive the crime your brothers committed when they wronged you. Now please forgive us the wrong that we, the servants of your father's gods, have done." Joseph cried when he received this message. Then brothers themselves came and bowed down before him. "Here we are before you as your slave," they said. But Joseph said to them, "Don't be afraid. I can put myself in the place of God. You plotted evils against me, but God turned into it good, in order to preserve the lives of many people who are alive today because of what happened. You have nothing to fear. I will take care of you and your children." So he reassured them with kind words that touched their heart. The death of Joseph. Verse 22, Joseph continued to live in Egypt with his father family. He was 110 years old when he died. He lived to see Ephraim's children and grandchildren. He also lived to receive the children of Mashir or son of Manasseh into the family. He says to his brothers, "I am about to die, but God will return you to take care of you and lead you out of this land to the land solemnly promised." He solemnly promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Then Joseph asked his people to make a vow. "Promise me," he said, "that when God leads you to the land, you will take my body with you." So Joseph died in Egypt at the age of 110, then embalmed his body and put it in a coffin. Let's translate this in Tagalog. Book Genesis chapter 15, Genesis kabanata 50, talata 1 hanggang 26. Niyakap ni Jose ang kanyang ama at umiiyak na hinagkan pagkatapos sinutusan niya ang kanyang mga manggagamot na imbalsamuhin ang bangkay. Ayon sa kaugalian ng mga Egyptyo, 40 araw ginugol nila sa paggawa nito. 70 araw na nagluksa ang bansang Egipto. Pagkatapos ng pagluluksa, sinabi ni Jose sa mga kagawad ng Faraon, "Pakasabi nga ninyo sa Faraon na hiniling ng aking mga bago na mamatay doon ko siya ilibing sa libingan ng kanyang inihanda sa Kanaan, at aking inay pangakong susundin ko ang kanyang bilin. Kaya humingi ako ng pahintulot na dalhin ko ron sa ang kanyang bangkay at ibabalik agad ako pagkatapos." Sumagot ang Paraon, "Lumakad ka na at ilibing mo siya ayon sa iyong pangako sa kanya." Sumama kay Jose para makipaglibing ang lahat ng kagawad ng Paraon, ng mga may matataas na katungkulan sa palasyo at ang mga kilalang mamamayan sa buong Egipto. Kasama rin si Jose, ang kanyang mga kapatid at ang buong sambahayan ng kanyang ama. Ang naiwan lamang sa Gosen ay ang maliliit na bata, ang kawan ng tupa, kambing at baka, may mga nangabayo, may mga sasakay sa karwahe, ano pat napakarami nila. Talata 10, pagsapit nila sa giikan sa atad sa silangan ng ilog Jordan, huminto muna sila. Nagdaos sila ron ng luksang parangal sa Yuma at 7 araw nagdalamati ron si Jose. Nasaksihan ng mga taga-Kanan ang ginawa ng pangangaral na pagpaparangal na ito, kaya't nasabi nila, "Ganito palang magluksa ang mga taga-Egipto." Dahil dito tinawag na Abel Mizraim ang dakong iyon. Sinunod nga ng mga anak ni Jacob ang hiniling ng kanilang ama. Dinala sa kanan ang bangkay at doon inilibing sa yungib na sa haparang na binili kay Ephron. Matapos ilibing ang ama, si Jose nagbalik sa Egipto kasama ang kanyang mga kapatid at sa lahat ng kasama sa paglilibing. Binigyan ni Jose ng kapanatagan ng mga kapatid. Mula nung mamatay ang kanilang ama, Nag-alala na ang mga kapatid ni Jose, sabi nila, paano kung galit pa sa atin si Jose at gantihan tayo sa kalupitang ginawa natin sa kanya. Nagpasugo sila kay Jose at pinasabi ang ganito, bago namatay ang ating ama, pinabili niya sa nasabihin ito sa iyo. Nakikiusap ako na patawarin mo ng iyong mga kapatid sa ginawa nila sa iyo. Kaya naman, ngayon mananahimik kami sa iyo at patawarin mo na kami alang-alang sa Diyos ng ating amang. Napaiyak si Jose nang marinig ito. Lumapit na lahat ang kanyang mga kapatid at yumuko sa harapan niya. Kami mga lipi mawiki niya. Ngunit, sinabi ni Jose, huwag kayong matakot, hindi ko kayo paghihigantihan. Masama nga ang inyong ginawa sa akin, subalit ipinahintulot iyon ng Diyos para sa kabutihan at dahil doon naligtas ang marami. Kaya huwag na kayo mag-alala, ako ang bahala sa inyo at sa inyong mga anak. Pagkarinig nito na panatag ang kanilang kalooban. Ang pagkamatay ni Jose. Nanatili nga si Jose sa Egipto kasama ang kanyang mga kapatid. Umabot siya ng 110 taon. Bago namatay, inabot pa siya ng mga apo ni Ephraim, gayon din ang mga apo niya kay Makir na anak ni Manases. Ang mga ito'y kinalong pa niya ng isilang. Sinabi niya sa kanyang mga kapatid, malapit na akong mamatay, ngunit huwag kayo mag-alala. Iingatan kayo ng Diyos at ibabalik sa lupa yung ipinangako niya kina Abraham, Isaac at Jacob. Pagkatapos pinagbili niya sa mga anak ng Israel, gagawin sa kanyang bangkay. Wikay niya, isumpa nyo sa akin na pag kayo'y nilingap ng Diyos at inalis na sa lupa ito, dadaling nyo ang aking mga buto. Namatay nga si Jose sa gulang na 110 taon at 10 taon. Siya ay inaimbalsamo sa Egipto at inilagay sa isang kabao. To all my friends and viewers, brothers and sisters, this is the end of my topic about Book of Genesis, the whole chapter of Book of Genesis. Good morning again, good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to all my friends and viewers. Thank you for watching my video, to my live stream, and shout out to again before I end. I will shout out to Nico Vlog TV. Alright. So, thank you. God bless you all. More blessings to come and more power. Stay tuned to my next topic. Book of Exodus. Bye-bye.